Tonight, we're diving deep into the mysterious Indonesia connection, Gen 10's lost history. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment day 1. Now let's get back to the video. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world where the boundaries between our reality and the digital frontier of Pokémon begin to dissolve into the humid air of the tropics. We have long looked toward the horizon for Generation 10, speculating on where the journey might take us next. The official reports speak of winds and waves, of a sun-drenched archipelago that mirrors the spirit of Hawaii. But beneath the polished surface of press releases and official reveals is a whisper that refuses to be silenced. It is a whisper that carries the scent of ancient spices, the shadow of volcanic peaks, and the echo of a history that predates the very consoles we hold in our hands. Tonight, we are going to look past the neon lights of Metropolis and the survivalist jungles of the official narrative to explore a connection so deep and so hidden that it feels like a memory from a dream. We are talking about the mysterious Indonesia connection, a tapestry of lost history that suggests the roots of Generation 10 might stretch far deeper into the southern hemisphere than anyone dared to imagine. Why does this matter? Why should we spend the next several hours unraveling a thread that seems to contradict the very news we have been given? Because the history of Pokémon has always been a history of hidden layers. Every region we have ever explored is a palimpsest, a canvas where new stories are painted over ancient truths. When we look at the architecture of the upcoming generation, when the way the jungle is described as a living, breathing character, we are seeing more than just a game mechanic. We are seeing a reflection of a world that is ancient, complex, and deeply tied to the real-world lore of the Indonesian archipelago. To understand Generation 10 is to understand the soul of the tropics, and to understand that soul, we must look at the place where the world's most diverse ecosystems and most profound mythologies collide. This isn't just about a video game release in 2027. This is about how we interpret the myths of our modern age and how a franchise can tap into the collective unconscious of a region that has been overlooked for far too long. The mystery begins with a simple question. If Generation 10 is truly about the wind and the waves, why does so much of its leaked DNA point toward a heritage that feels distinctly Indonesian? It in the whispers of the survival gameplay, a nod to the rugged, untamed spirit of the Komodo Islands. It in the rumoured designs of creatures that bear a striking resemblance to the Barong and the Rangda, the eternal spirits of balance from Balinese lore. How did these influences find their way into a setting that is officially billed as something else entirely? Is it possible that the development of these games involved a deep dive into the lost history of the maritime Silk Road? Could it be that the tropical setting we are being promised is actually a composite, a bridge between the familiar and the forgotten? As we settle in for this journey, we're going to peel back the layers of the official announcements to find the ghost of Indonesia hiding in the code. We will ask what it means for a 13-year-old protagonist to step into a world that feels both brand new and thousands of years old. We will wonder if the lottery that starts the journey is truly a matter of luck, or if it is a summons to a place where the barrier between the human world and the world of spirits is at its thinnest. This is a journey for the quiet hours, a deep dive designed to carry you through the night as we explore the intersections of myth, geography, and digital storytelling. We're going to examine the maps, the lore, and the cultural footprints that suggest Generation 10 is carrying a secret legacy. We will look at the way the jungle serves as a cathedral of the natural world, and how the survival elements are not just a challenge for the player, but a tribute to the resilience of those who have lived in harmony with the archipelago for millennia. This is the story of a lost history, a connection that bridges the gap between the Switch 2 and the ancient stones of Borobudur. It is a story of how a global phenomenon can become a vessel for the stories of a specific, vibrant, and mysterious part of our world. So let the sound of the waves pull you in. Let the wind from the south carry you toward a horizon you thought you knew, but are only just beginning to see. We are going into the heart of the mystery, into the depths of the jungle, and into the very soul of what makes this upcoming generation a landmark in the history of the medium. The sun is setting over the islands, and the shadows are beginning to speak. It is time to listen to what they have to say about the world of Pokémon and the hidden threads that tie it to the emeralds of the equator. As we drift further into this exploration, we must consider the weight of the silence that surrounds these connections. In the world of high-stakes game development, nothing is accidental. Every leaf on a digital tree, every cry of a new Pokémon, and every curve of a coastal cliff is a choice made by artists and historians working in tandem. But when the survivalist themes of Generation 10, we are seeing a shift in the philosophy of the franchise. It is no longer just about the collection, it is about the immersion. It is about the feeling of being small in a world that is vast and indifferent. This feeling is the core of the Indonesian experience, where the earth itself is alive with the fire of volcanoes and the shifting of tectonic plates. By tracing these thematic links, we are not just speculating on a game, we are uncovering a dialogue between the creators and a landscape that demands respect. We are looking at the way the lost history of the Majapahit Empire might be reflected in the ruins we will eventually traverse. We are questioning the origin of the elemental powers that govern the winds and the waves. Is it possible that the developers are using the Hawaiian aesthetic as a mask, a way to make a deeper, more complex exploration of Indonesian culture accessible to a global audience? Or is there something even more profound at play, a synthesis of island cultures that creates a new, universal mythology? The stakes are high because our stories define us. If Generation 10 truly taps into this hidden history, it represents a moment of cultural recognition on a scale we have rarely seen in gaming. It means that the stories of the archipelago, the legends of the sea people, and the intricate balance of the jungle are being woven into the fabric of a world that millions of children and adults will inhabit. This is why we are here tonight, to recognize those threads before they are fully integrated into the mainstream. To appreciate the complexity of the inspiration before it is simplified for the masses. We are looking for the fingerprints of the artisans, the echoes of the storytellers, and the quiet presence of a history that refuses to stay lost. As the night grows deeper and the world around you fades away, let these thoughts settle. We are on the verge of a discovery that changes how the map of the Pokémon world forever. The journey is long, the path is overgrown with vines of mystery, but the destination promises a clarity that only comes when we dare to look beneath the surface. Let us begin the descent into the green heart of the mystery. Let us find the Indonesia connection. At precisely midnight, Jakarta time, on March 15th, 2026, the obscure corner of the web, known as Kaskus Anon, ignited like a flare in the digital darkness. This wasn't your typical 4chan clone or polished Reddit thread. No, Kaskus Anon was a raw, unfiltered haven for Indonesia's underground gamers and leak chasers. Threads scrolling endlessly, with pixelated memes and half-baked rumours. But that night, posts flooded in at a rate of dozens per minute, each one dropping nothing but strings of numbers, latitude and longitude coordinates, pinned to a swath of jungle terrain, deep in the heart of Borneo. No explanations, no images, just those cold, precise digits repeating like a Morse code distress signal, coordinates clustering around coordinate 7 degrees north, 113 degrees east, over and over, buried in anonymous bumps that kept the threads alive through the humid pre-dawn hours. You could almost feel the stickiness of the air in those posts, the way the timestamps synced perfectly with server logs, from servers routed through Singapore proxies, hinting at insiders who knew better than to post from home IPs. By 2 a.m. local time, the board's modest user base, usually a sleepy mix of night owls trading bootleg ROMs, was buzzing. Someone finally attached a grainy screenshot, a map overlay showing those points converging on undocumented logging trails, places where satellite imagery blurred into green voids. Whispers started in the replies. Was this a prank from rival leakers, or something tied to the fresh Pokémon presence hype? The official reveal of Winds and Waves had just dropped 2 weeks prior, promising a lush tropical paradise with Hawaiian breezes and Switch 2 exclusivity in 2027. But these coordinates screamed something earthier, wilder, rooted in Indonesia's own rain-soaked underbelly. As the sun crept over the Sunda Shelf, those coordinates began resolving into something tangible. Savvy Anons cross-referenced them with Google Earth archives, pulling up thermal scans from 2024 that showed unnatural heat signatures, like hidden server farms or construction sites camouflaged under canopy. But the real spark hit when the first image dump surfaced, time-stamped at 0400 hours, a zip file of uncompressed jungle assets that didn't match anything from the official trailer. Frame by frame, these leaks painted a picture of dense, claustrophobic foliage, vines twisting like veins over moss-slick boulders, fireflies pulsing in bioluminescent swarms that cast eerie glows on dew-kissed ferns. The official Winds and Waves teaser, aired on February 27, 2026, showed sun-drenched beaches and gentle swells lapping at volcanic shores, all polished with that signature Game Freak sheen, palm fronds swaying in a postcard breeze. Pull up the trailer side by side with these leaks, and the discrepancies scream at you. In the official cut, the jungle fringes are a mere backdrop, sunlight filtering through leaves in soft golden shafts, Pokémon silhouettes darting with playful animations, everything optimized for that vibrant, approachable vibe. But these leaked assets, ripped straight from what looked like alpha builds, plunged you into murkier depths, fog rolling thick across root-tangled paths where visibility dropped to mere meters, textures layered with mud splatters and fungal growths that cycled realistically with moisture levels. Notice the leaf shaders. The official ones flat and stylized, cell-shaded for pop, while the leaks used subsurface scattering that made foliage breathe, veins pulsing faintly, as if alive, wind animations whipping fronds with a chaotic fury absent from the trailer. And the lighting, oh the lighting, dynamic god rays piercing official canopies in heroic beams, versus the leak's harsh, filtered gloom from a low-angle sun, casting long shadows that hid potential pitfalls, like sinkholes or ambushes. Dig deeper, and the foliage models reveal proprietary tech not seen since the scrapped survival experiments in earlier leaks. Official trailer Pokémon, like a tentative water-type starter glimpsed in waves, frolic in open clearings, but these assets layered collision meshes for dense thickets, implying pathfinding challenges where your team might snag on thorns or trigger territorial encounters. Particle effects diverged wildly too, official rain a gentle patter with rainbow refractions, leaks unleashing monsoonal downpours that pooled realistically, affecting traction and visibility, mud physics deforming underfoot with viscous splashes. Even the skyboxes clashed, the trailer's endless azure with cotton clouds giving way to leak overcasts heavy with storm fronts, thunder rumbles baked into ambient audio files that hummed with tropical menace. These weren't reskins, they were parallel builds, assets coded for endurance mechanics, hunger bars flickering in HUD remnants, crafting stations half buried in leaf litter. The community reaction split like a fault line the moment those images hit Twitter and Discord servers worldwide. Your skeptics piled on first, calling it a masterful deepfake from modders high on Red Bull. pointing to metadata timestamps that could have been forged with freeware tools. Artifacts in the textures dismissed as compression noise from hasty uploads. Forums like Cerebi erupted with threads dissecting pixel peeping, zoom-ins on leaf edges claiming AI upscaling giveaways, voices shouting hoax to protect the hype around the confirmed Hawaiian-inspired isles. But then the evidence mounted, slow and inexorable, like vines reclaiming a ruin. Hash comparisons surfaced matching official trailer shaders, but evolved proprietary strings, like Jungle Survival Borneo Pass, embedded in file headers, corroborated by data miners who cracked the zips to find voice lines in Bahasa Indonesia, faint echoes of Hati-hati di hutan, warning of jungle perils. Doubters faltered as cross-verified coordinates linked to real-world Pokémon pop-up events in Kalimantan, unannounced gatherings that drew crowds to those exact latitudes, AR overlays flickering with unreleased models. Growing murmurs of a shadow project took hold, whispers of a parallel Gen 10 fork, codenamed something like Archipelago Eclipse, shelved after internal playtests revealed the survival grit clashed with family-friendly mandates. Assets mothballed but not deleted, resurfacing now via an Indonesian dev who couldn't stay silent. Skepticism curdled into uneasy fascination, reset era polls tipping from 80% fake to 60% legit, fueled by waveform analyses of leak ambiances matching Borneo field recordings, the chorus of cicadas and distant gibbon calls too authentic for fabrication. What started as midnight static on a niche board snowballed into the first crack in the official narrative, hinting at layers buried deeper than any jungle floor. And as those discrepancies piled up, eyes turned to the trailer's opening shots of a gleaming cityscape, a place called Metropolis, where the protagonist's lottery-won vacation kicks off amid skyscrapers that felt oddly out of sync with the rest. That pulls us straight into Chapter 2, the Metropolis discrepancy, where the urban facade starts crumbling under even stranger scrutiny. Those leaked jungle assets from the midnight coordinates weren't just a glitch in the matrix. They funneled us right into the glowing core of the official Pokémon Winds and Waves trailer. Right there, smack in the center, stands Metropolis, the gleaming starter city where every new Pokémon journey kicks off. But pause for a second and really look at it. Not the polished surface everyone accepts at face value, but the bones beneath, the towering skyscrapers with their jagged asymmetrical profiles, the dense grid of elevated walkways snaking between blocks like veins pulsing with traffic, the way those mid-rise buildings huddle in clusters around chaotic street-level markets. It's not some generic tropical paradise hub. No, this is Jakarta's urban sprawl, staring back at us, mirrored almost pixel for pixel. Zoom in on the trailer footage from that February 27th Pokémon presence. The official reveal shows Metropolis bathed in sunset hues, palm fronds swaying lazily in the foreground, giving off those postcard Hawaiian vibes. Yet, you stack it side by side with drone shots of Jakarta's Sudirman Central Business District, and the parallels hit like a thunderbolt. Those same brutalist concrete towers, etched with vertical fins to cut the equatorial heat, rise identical in height and spacing. The overpasses layered in multiple tiers to handle the endless flow of scooters and angkots, exact matches, down to the rusted railing patterns that the trailer glosses over with a fresh coat of digital shine. Even the peripheral shanties, those makeshift stalls spilling out from under flyovers, crammed with neon signs hawking street food. Jakarta's Tamrin Street, at rush hour, could swap places with Metropolis Plaza without a single bystander blinking. And it's not coincidence. Game Freak's art team doesn't pull from thin air. Dig into their asset libraries from past titles, and you'll find echoes, subtle nods in Paldea's urban edges or Unova's Castilia City, but nothing this overt. Why transplant Jakarta's throbbing megacity pulse into a game pitched as a breezy island getaway? Follow the breadcrumbs, from those Indonesian image board leaks, and it starts to click. The coordinates weren't random, they triangulated on real-world sites in Greater Jakarta, hyperlocal pins dropped by insiders who knew the reference pool. Metropolis isn't homage, it's a blueprint, lifted and laundered through a filter of leis and luaus to dodge scrutiny. That brings us to the Hawaiian aesthetic itself, the luau skirts draped over everything to sell the vacation dream. Official promo art floods us with ukulele strums, volcanic craters ringed by hibiscus, and beaches where Pikachu sips coconut water. It's relentless. You're engineered to evoke Oahu or Maui at their most idyllic. But peel back that layer and cracks appear everywhere. The foliage in Metropolis isn't pure plumeria and Norfolk pines, it's beetle nut palms and frangipani hybrids that scream Southeast Asia, the kind shading Jakarta's elite neighbourhoods in Menteng. The colour palette? Those washed out yellows and aggressive greens match monsoon season humidity over Honolulu's trade winds. Even the fonts on in-game billboards, blocky, sans serif with subtle ligatures, mirror Bahasa Indonesia signage from malls like Grand Indonesia, not Aloha shirts. This isn't sloppy design, it's deliberate misdirection, a smokescreen thicker than volcanic ash. Why go to such lengths? Because admitting a Southeast Asian core, especially Indonesian, risks unravelling the sanitized narrative Game Freak has built for 3 decades. Indonesia's urban chaos, flood-prone streets, smog-choked horizons, the raw energy of 15 million souls grinding daily, clashes hard with Pokémon's kid-friendly escapism. Hawaiian vibes, safe, marketable, nostalgic. But layer in Jakarta's influence, and you're flirting with real-world grit. The 2019 monsoons that drowned half the city, or the haze fires that turned skylines apocalyptic. Those leaks suggest the devs borrowed not just looks, but atmosphere. Metropolis at dusk feels alive with that same humid tension. Street vendors hawking Gorengan under flickering LEDs, the distant honk of jam-packed traffic. Now, linger on those street-level details a moment longer. In the trailer, as the protagonist's mum waves goodbye from a curb. Notice the food carts? Not hot dog stands or shave ice, look closer. Skewers grilling over open coals, plastic stools clustered around plastic tables, steam rising from vats of what could pass for soto ayam. It's subtle, but unmistakable. Jakarta's warungs, transplanted wholesale. And the crowds, diverse skin tones, headscarves fluttering in the breeze, a far cry from the homogenized beachgoers of Hawaii. This is Southeast Asia's multicultural sprawl, the fusion of Javanese, Betawi, Chinese, Indonesian influences that define the capital. Game Freak masked it with ukulele overlays, and Mai Tai is in the soundtrack, but the architecture betrays them. Metropolis pulses with Jakarta's heartbeat, resilient, overcrowded, electric. But here's where it twists darker, the first real fracture in the vacation postcard. Amid all this urban mimicry, spot the anomalies in Metropolis's trailer loop. Vending machines don't just dispense Pokeballs, they stock ration packs, electrolyte tabs, and what looks like insect repellent sprays. Billboards flash weather warnings, incoming storm, secure supplies. Not the fluffy trade winds of a Hawaiian holiday, but prep for something harsher. And in the leaked assets bridging to the jungle, we catch a glimpse, a UI overlay flickering active, resource meters for water, stamina, foraging. Survival mechanics woven into the city's fabric from the jump. This shatters the core Pokémon promise. Every gen starts with a gentle ramp. Your mom packs your bags, Professor hands you a starter, off to the gym badges. Vacation narrative, explicit in the winds and waves pitch. The 13-year-old lotto winner jetted to paradise for fun and frolic. Yet Metropolis hints at scarcity right out the gate. Cracked sidewalks slick with recent rain, overhanging awnings sagging under pooled water, NPCs muttering about stocking up before the tide turns. It's the first whisper of a mechanic that demands you gather, craft, endure, contradicting the hand-holding tradition. No more infinite Pokémarts. This city feels like a staging ground for Siege, Jakarta's flood history encoded as gameplay. Those Indonesian leaks weren't sounding alarms for nothing. They exposed how Metropolis anchors a region built on real peril, monsoons that swallow streets whole, just like Jakarta's Ciliwung River overflows. The Hawaiian gloss, a velvet curtain over a survival gauntlet, hiding influences too potent, too unpolished for prime time. As we peel further, the protagonist's entry point looms larger, that fateful mother's lottery ticket, the one that supposedly whisks her kid to bliss. What if it was rigged from the start, a lure into something far more treacherous? Stick around for Chapter 3, The Mother's Lottery, where we uncover how one desperate entry form hid the darkest pivot in Pokémon history. But as Metropolis's towering spires echo Jakarta's relentless skyline, with that Hawaiian gloss starting to crack under scrutiny, the spotlight shifts to the kid at the heart of this tale. A 13-year-old protagonist yanked from everyday suburbia into this tropical whirlwind, all because their mother punched a few numbers into an online lottery. On the surface, it's the ultimate feel-good origin story. Picture the faded family photos on the mantle, the single mum scraping by in a cramped apartment, dreaming of escape. She enters the drawer on a whim, maybe during a late-night scroll through some glossy travel site tied to the game's developers. And boom, they're winners. A fully funded vacation to the islands of winds and waves, complete with first-class flights out of Metropolis and a beachfront villa waiting. Heartwarming, right? Except when you dig into the code scraps from those early leaks, the lottery doesn't add up. Data miners who combed through the midnight dump from that Indonesian board flagged it first. The win isn't randomized like you'd expect in a standard game mechanic. No sprawling prize pool with thousands of entries, no verifiable odds splashed across in-game news feeds. Instead, it's a single hyper-specific draw, time-stamped to coincide perfectly with the protagonist's birthday. Entries were supposedly open for just 48 hours, funneled through a defunct subdomain that vanished from public records weeks before the official reveal. Who hosts a lottery that ghosts itself? And why does the mother's user ID trace back to an archived email linked to obsolete biotech forums from the early 2000s? It's as if the system was rigged from the start, a digital breadcrumb trail designed to lure one family into the jungle's maw. Now lean in closer, because this is where the protagonist's backstory unravels thread by thread. Our kid isn't some blank slate avatar. Leaked character bios paint a picture of quiet isolation. School reports mentioning skipped classes and a fascination with old expedition logs. The mother? She's the anchor, a former lab tech who quit her job abruptly a decade ago, citing family reasons. But cross-reference that with the hidden dialogue files tucked away in the leak's encrypted audio packs, and her story morphs into something far darker. Grainy voice lines, ripped from what must have been prototype cutscenes, capture her muttering in the dead of night. They said the Java C project was sealed after the incident. No loose ends. Java Sea, that stretch of water between Borneo and Java, riddled with shipwrecks and whispers of Cold War-era experiments. The files name-drop a firm called Archipelagos Research, shuttered in 2012 after a freak storm swallowed their offshore platform whole. Official reports blamed rogue waves, but divers who poked around later swore they saw lab equipment tangled in the coral, bioluminescent residue that didn't match any known species. Those dialogue snippets aren't random filler. They're layered under ambient rain sounds, playable only if you trigger a hidden debug menu in the leaked build. In one, the mother argues with an off-screen voice, "I entered the lottery to get us out, not deeper in. You promised exile, not this." Exile. The word hangs there, distorting through static. Another clip has her coaching the protagonist. Whatever you find in the waves, don't trust the currents. They pull you back to where it started. Archipelagos wasn't just drilling for oil or mapping reefs. Patents filed under their name hint at genetic splicing, early Pokémon adjacent tech before the franchise locked down its lore. Rumors from ex-employees on deep web threads claim they were testing hybrid creatures in isolated atolls, funded by shadowy investors who vanished when regulators came knocking. The platform's sinking. No accident. Sabotage, they say, to bury evidence of escapes into the wild. Feel that shift yet? What begins as a sun-soaked holiday promo, mom and kids splashing in turquoise shallows, chasing legendary Pokémon through vine-choked ruins, twists into something orchestrated. The lottery wasn't a gift, it was bait. A forced relocation, dragging this family across oceans to confront ghosts from the mother's past. No more carefree surf sessions or postcard sunsets. The beaches turned treacherous, riddled with anomalies that mirror those Java Sea experiments, glowing eyes in the mist that know her name. The kids' journal entries, data mined from save files, start innocent, excitement over rare shells, first gym badges. But by mid-game, their frantic scribbles about locked memories surfacing, visions of submerged labs and humming machinery. The exile is total, stranding them in a region where paradise conceals predation. And as those submerged secrets bubble up from the deep, they resonate with ancient powers long buried on these shores. Whispers of a once mighty empire, its stone carvings etched with symbols that match the firm's logos. You'll hear those echoes loud and clear in Chapter 4, echoes of the Majapahit. Those hidden dialogue files from the mother's lottery win didn't stop at whispers of a Java Sea research firm. They pointed straight to a cache of artifacts pulled from the ocean floor off Bali, relics etched with symbols that match nothing in modern Pokémon lore. What if that firm wasn't chasing fish, but unlocking the empire that once ruled these waters, the Majapahit, a 14th century powerhouse whose golden age stretched from Sumatra to the Philippines, its influence woven into every shadow of Southeast Asia's history? Dig into the official Wins trailer, pause it at the 30-second mark, and you'll see it. The box legendary for Wins, a massive avian beast with wings like tempests, talons gripping storm clouds, eyes blazing with divine fury. This isn't some generic eagle ripped from a nature documentary. Its silhouette echoes the Garuda, the mythical bird king from Hindu Javanese epics, guardian of the gods, depicted in Majapahit temple reliefs as a colossal predator devouring nagas, its feathers carved in volcanic stone at sites like Candi Suku. The spread of those wings, spanning horizons in the trailer's flyover shots, mirrors the exact proportions of Garuda statues from the Majapahit Palace ruins in Trowalan, 7 times the height of a man, with the beak curved like a scimitar forged for Vishnu himself. Hawaiian lore? It crumbles under scrutiny. Native Hawaiian myths feature birds like the Io hawk or the Pueo owl, earthbound hunters tied to volcanic slopes and rainforests, not sky-dominating thunder gods. No feathered sovereigns in Polynesian tales command winds that shatter mountains or carry kings across oceans. But Majapahit chroniclers in the Nagarekretagama described Garuda as the Lord of the Winds, bearer of the Vishnu staff, soaring over Java's rice terraces and spice islands. Freeze frame the wind's legendary's idle animation. Those subtle feather patterns, rippling like batik motifs from 14th century Keres hilts, invisible at full speed but screaming authenticity when magnified. Game Freak didn't pull this from a Hawaiian postcard, they dredged it from imperial archives. Now, layer on the wave's counterpart, the serpentine leviathan coiling through coral abyss. Its scales glint with iridescent blues, body undulating in sinuous loops that recall the Naga basilisk from Majapahit bas-reliefs, eternal foes of Garuda in the cosmic dance of empire myths. These two weren't designed in isolation. Data miners slicing into the alpha build found model files tagged with Javanese script fragments. Gawa for the bird, Naga twisted into pixel art on underbellies. The empire's artists chiseled these jewels into every major temple, from Bedulu to Blitar, symbolizing the balance of sky and sea that Majapahit kings invoked to legitimize their rule over archipelago trade routes. But the real bombshell hides in plain sight, embedded in the game's user interface textures. Boot up the leaked Metropolis menu screen, crank the resolution to 4000 by 3000, and apply a negative filter. There, in the faint glow of the health bar gradients and the Pokédex scroll borders, Sanskrit-inspired Devanagari glyphs emerge. Vayu, the wind deity, interlaced with Purvavati, ancient name for eastern winds in old Javanese Kakawin poems. These aren't random noise artifacts. They're deliberate watermarks, sourced from Majapahit inscriptions on copper plates, unearthed in the 1980s near Mojokerto. The Java Sea firm? Their final logs, buried in those dialogue dumps, reference scanning these exact plates for biomechanical resonance, code for grafting empire myths onto Pokémon DNA. Trace the lineage further, and it snaps into focus. Majapahit sculptors under King Hyam Wuruk crafted Garuda pendants for royal Pendopo pavilions, wings flared to invoke monsoon gales that powered their armadas. Wind's legendary doesn't just ape the pose, its attack cycles, whirlwind summons, aerial dives, replicate the ritual dances of Garuda Wisnu Kenkana, still performed in Ubud today, where performers mimic the bird's descent to devour chaos. Hawaiian chants speak of trade winds as gentle escorts for voyagers, not wrathful enforcers. This depth, this ferocity, is Javanese imperial bombast, bottled for a Generation 10 engine. Those UI textures? Cross-reference them with the Paraton Chronicle, Majapahit's semi-mythic history text. The glyphs align character for character with passages praising Erlanger's Garuda visions, foretelling empire dominance. No developer interview mentions this, no art book footnote. Yet here they are, lurking in bitmaps, visible only to those who know where to prod. The research firm chased these echoes, believing the empire encoded legendary frequencies that could summon real phenomena, storms off Bali that mirror the trailer's title sequence. You feel the pull now, don't you? From lottery shadows to empire ghosts, every leak threads back to those 14th century thrones. And as we peel away the jungle canopy next in the jungle survival pivot, one question lingers. What primal mechanics did Majapahit survivors embed in the wilds, waiting for a 13-year-old protagonist to trigger? Those ancient Garuda echoes in the wind's legendary weren't just artistic flourishes. They hinted at a gameplay revolution buried in the leaks, one that thrusts players into a jungle where every breath could be their last. Leaked code snippets from that Indonesian board reveal survival mechanics stripped down to the bone. Hunger that gnaws at your screen edges with a pulsing red vignette, thirst that blurs your vision into heat-shimmered haze, all set against an unforgiving tropical ecosystem teeming with threats no Hawaiian postcard could prepare you for. Picture the data dumps. Stamina bars that drain not from battles alone, but from the simple act of trudging through knee-deep mud under a canopy, so thick sunlight fractures into sickly green shafts. Hunger kicks in after just 20 minutes of real-time exploration if you ignore the foraging mini-games, picking toxic berries that swell your Pokémon's sprites with realistic bloating effects, or hunting elusive insects whose animations mimic the twitchy desperation of real starvation. Thirst hits harder, forcing you to track dew on giant leaves or risk dehydration debuffs that halve your speed and accuracy, turning a casual stroll into a desperate scramble for streams riddled with leeches and parasites. This isn't Pokémon as we know it. The ecosystem fights back with procedural weather, sudden monsoons that flood paths, turning them into sucking quagmires where your character slips and sprains, or dry spells that ignite brush fires, forcing evasive detours. Venomous vines that ensnare and poison. Swarms of pixel-perfect mosquitoes draining health in ticks of 1% at a time. Leakers called it primal mode, a layer toggled on beyond the demo city, where neglecting these meters leads to blackouts, your screen fading to the protagonist's ragged breaths, waking up robbed or worse with Pokémon fled into the wild. Why bury this in the Switch 2 debut? Developers at Game Freak, facing the hardware leap, pivoted hard toward a primal experience to showcase the console's rumored haptics and ambient audio. Imagine Joy-Cons rumbling with your character's parched throat rasping, or the dock's upgraded speakers filling your room with the drip-drip of humidity and distant predator calls. It's a bold sell for 2027's launch window. ditching turn-based comfort for something raw, almost roguelike, to hook the survival craze from games like Ark or The Forest. Insiders whisper this shift came late, after early Hawaiian prototypes washed out as too tame. The jungle's brutality mirrors Indonesia's real wilds, where Java's rainforests claim lives yearly, not the sanitized beaches of official trailers. That contrast sharpens the mystery. Metropolis gleams under perpetual blue skies, skyscrapers of glass and chrome pulsing with neon ads for poke bowls, streets alive with vendor carts hawking fusion cuisine, the air crisp with ocean salt and electric hum. It's freedom, a lottery-won paradise where your 13-year-old hero struts carefree. But venture past the tram lines into the deep bush, and light dies. The canopy smothers everything in suffocating darkness, broken only by bioluminescent fungi or the glow of a rare mega-evolution. Sounds warp city chatter to insectile cacophony, wind to rustling leaves hiding ambush predators. Your map grays out, compass spins wild from magnetic anomalies tied to ancient ruins, echoing those Majapahit temples we traced last time. Players in the leaks report panic rising as meters plummet. One data-mined audio file captures the protagonist muttering in accented English. "Ibu, this isn't the vacation you promised," her voice cracking over the mother's shadowy lottery ties. It's deliberate design, Metropolis as the honeyed lure, the jungle as the true test, peeling back the Hawaiian facade to reveal a Southeast Asian heart. Why else code in folklore beasts that shrug off modern Pokeballs, demanding ritual captures with incense and chants pulled straight from Balinese rites? This pivot reeks of scrapped betas, whispers of a 2024 build that went dark after the coordinates dropped. What horrors did testers uncover in those depths, forcing the primal overhaul? Hold that thought, because in Chapter 6, the lost beta of 2024, we unearth the footage that nearly killed the project, grainy clips of glitches summoning real-world anomalies, straight from the board that started it all. You won't sleep after this. That primal shift towards survival in the jungles didn't come from nowhere. Deep in the archives of a forgotten Game Freak server, a build from early 2024 surfaced last month, timestamped just before the official pivot to those sun-soaked Hawaiian shores. This wasn't some fan mod or blurry screenshot. It was raw, playable code, pulled from an internal FTP leak by a whistleblower who goes by the handle Archipelagos. And right there, in the title screen's world map, glowed a sprawling archipelago labeled Nusantara. Thousands of islands rendered in meticulous detail, from volcanic rims to mist-shrouded rice terraces. You can almost feel the humidity through the screen, the way the camera pans over emerald canopies alive with bioluminescent spores and rustling fronds. Nusantara wasn't a subtle nod, it was the heart of the game. Starter towns hugged jagged coastlines where waves crashed against coral reefs, teeming with water types that darted like silver ghosts. The Elite Four's arena perched on a karst peak, echoing the limestone spires of Gunung Sewu. Even the Pokédex entries whispered of local myths, legendaries bound to spice trade routes and shadow puppets come to life. Playtesters who accessed it described a region where every path forced choices, mirroring the survival hunger bars we'd glimpsed before, but tied to real ecosystems, fishing for sustenance under monsoon rains that blurred the horizon. What killed it? Not glitches or balance issues. A boardroom directive straight from the top. I reached out to 3 anonymous QA testers who'd clocked hundreds of hours on that build, voices distorted over encrypted calls, their words carrying the weight of non-disclosure agreements they'd long since shredded. One, calling himself Bamboo Shield, recalled the email chain verbatim. Late 2023, after initial hype tests showed Nusantara resonating hardest in Southeast Asia, the board mandated a cultural pivot. Too specific, they said. Risks alienating global markets. Hawaiian vibes were safer, marketable, a blank canvas for aloha shirts and luaus. But these testers pushed back in private Slack channels, arguing the pivot stripped the soul. Nusantara had identity, Bamboo Shield told me. It breathed history, not postcards. The second tester, Wavecutter, dove into the code diffs. Pre-pivot files brimmed with assets sourced from Indonesian fieldwork, voice lines in regional dialects mixed with English, even Pokeballs crafted from woven rattan. Post-pivot? A hasty reskin, swapping pagodas for tiki huts overnight. They didn't just change the map, Wavecutter said. They deleted the DNA. The third, Shadow Route, focused on the human cost. Overtime spiked, morale tanked, as devs rewrote 2 years of work in months. Board feared backlash from cultural purists, Shadow Route claimed, but really, it was about merch. Surfboards sell easier than satay stalls. Lurking in that scrapped build was something even wilder, a starter Pokémon that vanished without a trace. Meet Komodo, the dragon-type beast scrubbed from every official record. No teasers, no data mines, just echoes in the leak's RAM folders. Imagine a hulking lizard, scales like armored bark, venomous fangs dripping with paralytic glow, native to the Flores Island chain in the build's lore. Its cry echoed a guttural hiss, evoking the real Komodo dragons prowling those very shores, guardians of ancient sultanates. Evolving into a fire-ground behemoth called Nagaraja, it embodied raw power, perfect for the primal survival loop, where you'd tame it by surviving its hunts, scavenging eggs from volcanic nests. Why delete it? Testers speculated boardroom panic. Komodo's design pulled too directly from Indonesia's megafauna, its Pokédex tying into myths of the Naga serpents that guarded archipelago treasures. One leaked memo fragment read, "Avoid real-world fauna overlap, pivot to fantasy." Bamboo Shield swore he saw focus group notes flagging it as too aggressive for kids, but Wavecutter countered it was localization teams balking at the name's edge. Shadow Route dropped the real bomb. Komodo was meant as the mascot for Nusantara's box art, a symbol of untamed ferocity that clashed with the sanitized waves and winds reveal. By 2024's end, it was gone, overwritten like a bad dream, leaving players with vague grass starters that pale in comparison. These revelations hit harder when you trace the deletions. Archipelagos shared packet captures proving the build was play-tested in Tokyo hubs, scoring high on immersion until the axe fell. Forums buzz with blurry ROM dumps now, fans reverse engineering what Nusantara could have been, a region where survival wasn't gimmick but essence, where Komodo's roar shook the very Switch 2 frame rates. The cultural pivot saved the project, they say, but at what price? A diluted vision, Hawaiian gloss over southeast depth, and as we peel back these layers of what was lost, the Earth's fury beneath those islands starts to rumble. Up next in Chapter 7, volcanic lore and the Ring of Fire, where smouldering craters hide secrets that could reignite the entire Gen 10 saga. What legends stirred in the magma? Stay with me. Those anonymous QA testers didn't just whisper about a cultural pivot, they dropped hints about what survived the purge. Deep in the scrapped Nusantara build, the game's volcanic backbone was already forged, a chain of smouldering peaks ringing the archipelago like a crown of fire. And when the board demanded a Hawaiian reskin, those mountains didn't vanish. They adapted, their silhouettes tweaked just enough to blend into the tropical facade, but their fury, that stayed pure Indonesian wrath. Consider the central caldera in the game's mid-game zone, a yawning crater veiled in perpetual ash clouds, where lava rivers carve obsidian paths through fern-choked ravines. This isn't some postcard volcano from the Pacific playgrounds. No, peer closer at the leaked map overlays, and it mirrors Lake Toba's ghostly expanse on Sumatra with eerie precision. 74,000 years ago, Toba unleashed the most colossal eruption in human history, blanketing half the planet in soot, nearly wiping out our ancestors in a volcanic winter that lasted generations. The game's caldera echoes that cataclysm. Its depths hide submerged ruins accessible only after a chain of earthquakes, forcing players to navigate toxic fumes and boiling geysers. Data miners found environmental scripts programmed with Toba's exact VI7 explosive index, down to the pyroclastic flows that bury campsites overnight. Why embed such a specific apocalypse, if not to nod at the supervolcano that reshaped Southeast Asia's soul? But Toba's just the prelude. Swing your gaze westward in the game, to the narrower straits where the map fractures into splintered isles, and you'll spot Krakatoa staring back. That 1883 detonation in the Sunda Strait, 40 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb, sent tsunamis racing across oceans, its thunder heard 3,000 kilometers away. The game's equivalent is a shattered land bridge, riddled with vents that spew 40-meter plumes, collapsing bridges mid-battle, and summoning ash storms that blind your team for turns. Leaked audio logs from the beta describe it as the throat of the archipelago, with eruption cycles synced to real tectonic data from the Java Trench. Players who trigger the event sequence watch the horizon ignite. Pumice, raining like hellfire, reshaping routes permanently. It's no coincidence. Krakatoa's legacy is etched in Indonesia's DNA, a reminder that the Ring of Fire isn't a polite circle. It's a subduction scar where plates grind empires to dust. These aren't random Easter eggs. The game's volcanic geography forms a perfect arc, hugging the edges of its tropical sprawl, pulsing with seismic rumbles that foreshadow every major legendary encounter. Feel the ground tremble underfoot as you trek those ash-slick trails, the air thick with sulfur that stings your eyes, mirroring the Ring of Fire's relentless churn from Sumatra to the Philippines. Developers pulled from bathymetric scans of the region, embedding magma chambers that swell realistically over playthroughs, forcing survival choices amid encroaching lava. It's as if Nusantara's heart refused to be scrubbed, beating through the Hawaiian veneer. Now, hold that thought as we plunge deeper to the abyssal truths beneath the waves. The waves legendary, the serpentine behemoth coiling through the dual title reveal trailers, has data miners buzzing for months. Early models pegged it as a standard water-type guardian, but ripped files reveal something seismic. Its awakening isn't tied to surface tempests or coral thrones. No, waves stirs from the subduction zone itself, roused by deep-sea tectonic shifts along the Sunda megathrust. Imagine it, pressure building for centuries under the seafloor, plates overriding like colossal jaws until a magnitude 9 slip unleashes it. Beta cutscenes show waves emerging from a rift mirroring the 1960 Mentawai quake zone, its body armored in tectonic scales that shimmer with bioluminescent faults. It doesn't just summon waves, it births them from the Earth's convulsive rage, quelling eruptions only to feed on the aftershocks. Hidden lore entries describe it as the balancer of the shelf, a creature born from the same forces that birthed Indonesia's Thousand Islands. This ties straight into the endgame map, where the fog of war peels back to unveil the true canvas. That sprawling post-game expanse, dotted with atolls and seamounts, aligns perfectly with the Sunda Shelf's contours. Stretch it across real-world charts, and the fit is uncanny. The shelf's submerged plateau, drowned 20,000 years ago by rising seas, cradles Krakatoa's remnants and Toba's shadow. The game's hidden continent mirrors it beat for beat, drowned highlands rising as playable biomes after waves' climax, revealing underwater temples etched with plate tectonics motifs. Traverse those flooded plains, and you'll ford currents mapped to the Java Sea's gyres, battling abyssal foes amid chemosynthetic vents. It's no accident, the Sunda Shelf was the cradle of Austronesian seafaring, a lost landmass that unified the archipelago before the deluge. Pokémon's endgame resurrects it, piece by submerged piece. You can almost hear the developer's dilemma in those QA interviews. The board wanted Hawaii's lay-wrapped serenity, but the code screamed archipelago inferno. Volcanic chains that birth legendaries from the deep, maps that swallow the Sunda Shelf whole. What shadow does this cast over the official Hawaiian tale? The one they're desperately selling? That's the veil we'll tear next in Chapter 8. The shadow over Hawaii, where one leaked memo changes everything you thought you knew about the pivot. Stay with me. Those tectonic rumbles from the waves legendary don't just shape the ocean floor, they push up through the soil, feeding a jungle canopy that's far too vibrant, far too specific to belong on any sun-kissed Hawaiian shore. You can almost feel the humidity clinging to your skin as you push through the undergrowth in that official trailer, vines twisting like forgotten secrets, flowers blooming in defiant clusters that no botanist from Oahu would recognize. Pause for a second and consider the leaves rustling in the wind, broad, waxy fronds that catch the light just so, interspersed with bursts of color from shrubs that scream invasion from halfway across the world. In the trailer's opening sequence, at exactly the moment the protagonist steps off the boat onto that so-called tropical paradise, there's a foreground bloom, clusters of tiny five-petaled flowers in electric purple and orange, hugging the sandy path like they've claimed it for centuries. That's Lantana camara, but not the weedy variety you find choking Australian fences or Californian hillsides. This is the wild Sumatran morph, with its denser bracts and that subtle venation pattern on the leaves, endemic to the peat swamps of Indonesia's Western Isle, thriving in volcanic ash soils that Hawaii's basalt can't replicate. Botanists lit up online forums the day after the reveal, dissecting frame by frame. Lantana camara subsp. Sumatrana, that's the precise taxon, confirmed by leaf morphology and flower symmetry against herbarium samples from the Bogor Botanical Gardens. Oahu's got its plumeria and hibiscus. Sure, laymakers' staples swaying in the trade winds, but nothing like this. Sumatra's version evolved in isolation, its roots tangled in the Sunda Shelf's ancient floodplains, where monsoons dump 30 feet of rain a year and tigers still prowl the edges. How does it end up in a Pokémon trailer pitched as Hawaiian vibes? Not a stock asset oversight. Data miners pulled the model files, and it's labeled internally as Nusantara7, a holdover from those scrapped builds we uncovered last chapter. This is the Lantana incident, the botanical slip that cracked the facade wide open. Devs at Game Freak rushed the trailer for that February 2026 Pokémon Presents, splicing in assets from beta environments without a full scrub. One anonymous flora consultant, posting under the handle Peak Ghost on a private Reddit leak thread, broke it down. The photogrammetry scan matches LIDAR data from Gunung Lusa National Park, down to the mycorrhizal fungi networks visible in close-up shaders. Hawaii's Department of Agriculture flags lantana as a noxious weed, eradicated from public lands since the 1990s. Yet here it flourishes unchecked in the game's ecosystem, dropping seeds that trigger rare evolutions for bug types, according to leaked scripts. It's no accident, it's a fingerprint. You start to see the pattern emerge, don't you? Those volcanic echoes from Toba and Krakatoa we traced last time, now mirrored in flora that demands Sumatran humidity and acidity, 70% relative moisture, pH below 5.5, conditions that turn Honolulu's red dirt into concrete. The trailer's tropical island label isn't innocence. It's a deliberate veil, a marketing umbrella stretched wide to shelter something edgier, more fraught. Indonesia's archipelago carries baggage, political flashpoints in the Java Sea, cultural taboos around primal spirits, ethnic tensions that could tank sales in conservative markets. Pitch it as Hawaii, and you get the aloha shirt crowd, the ukulele nostalgia, no questions asked. But sneak in Nusantara's shadows, and you risk boycotts, regulatory hurdles from Jakarta's ministry. Think about the boardroom calculus. Leaks from that 2024 beta showed Nusantara outright, with Wayang-inspired mythos bleeding into every questline. Too hot. So they sand it down, Hawaiian vibes as the export version, a neutral paradise masking the Ring of Fire's fury, the peat fires that choke Sumatra yearly, the legends of sea gods devouring islands whole. Lantana's just the canary in the coal mine, chirping truths the suits tried to bury under ukuleles and luaus. Why else code in survival thirst mechanics that spike during monsoon events, pulling from real-time ASEAN weather APIs? It's not vibes, it's verisimilitude, smuggled past the sensors. The deeper you dig, the more the island reveals its dual soul. Sunsets over Waikiki by day, but by night, the foliage whispers of equatorial ghosts. That lantana patch in the trailer isn't decoration, it's a spawn point for a hidden legendary encounter tied to deep heat disturbances, echoing those tectonic shifts we left rumbling. Players who glitch past barriers report dialogue trees referencing forgotten sultanates, lore that Hawaiian mythology can't touch. Game Freak's not sloppy, they're subversive, testing how much truth we can stomach before the paradise cracks. And it all funnels toward those shadow plays flickering in the jungle clearings, where puppets dance on banana leaves to tell tales older than empires, the Wayang Kulit connection waiting just beyond the canopy, ready to pull the strings on everything we've uncovered so far. That lantana flower in the trailer wasn't just a careless copy-paste from some stock asset library. It was a crack in the facade, a glimpse into the Sumatran roots they're desperately trying to bury under Hawaiian palm fronds. But shadows tell truer stories than sunlight ever could, especially when those shadows flicker across a Pokémon battle screen. Dataminas cracked open the Gen 10 beta files last month, the ones leaked from that anonymous QA drop we covered in Chapter 6. Buried in the battle engine's animation layers were frames no one's supposed to see, subtle overlays that activate only under specific conditions. Trigger a sandstorm in the right arena, pause the frame just as a Pokémon's silhouette stretches against the backdrop, and there it is. Intricate shadow puppet silhouettes dancing behind the action. Not random glitches, but deliberate cutouts, shaped like elongated figures with rod-like limbs, carved headdresses, and weapons that twist like living vines. These aren't your standard Pokémon shadows. They're flat, two-dimensional puppets projected onto a glowing white screen, complete with gamelan-like audio echoes if you isolate the sound files. Wayang Kulit, the ancient Javanese art of leather shadow puppets, performed in village temples under the cover of night. Puppeteers, or dalang, sit cross-legged behind a taut cotton screen, illuminated by a flickering oil lamp. Their hands manipulate bamboo rods attached to intricately carved buffalo hide figures, bringing gods, demons, and heroes to life in epic tales from the Mahabharata and Ramayana, adapted with local spirits and kings. Each puppet's profile is a masterpiece. Garuda's wings arched like thunderclouds, Hanuman's tail curling in fury. Sound familiar? We've already traced the wind's legendary's design to that 14th century Majapahit Garuda iconography, the eagle god perched atop the empire's banners. But here, in the game's code, those same profiles emerge during battles, as if the Darling's lamp is casting the entire conflict from behind the veil. You can replicate it yourself if you've got the tools. Load up a ROM dump from the New Santara beta build, force a weather effect tied to the wind's legendary, and slow the footage to 0.5 times speed. The shadows elongate, forming a massive bird-form puppet that swoops across the screen, its beak snapping at spectral foes. Then, watch the antagonist's interface, that hooded figure glimpsed in the Metropolis intro cutscene. Its hands twitch in sync, rods extending from the wrists, pulling strings that aren't there. This isn't Easter egg territory, it's foundational code, hard-coded into the engine's rendering pipeline. Now pull back the curtain further. The wind's legendary isn't flying free, it's ensnared. The theory that's rippling through the underground forums goes like this. That majestic Garuda-inspired beast with its cyclone-summoning wings and empire-claiming gaze serves as the puppet for a hidden puppet master antagonist. Not some benevolent guardian of the islands, but a Dalang overlord lurking in the volcanic depths, orchestrating the primal survival chaos, from Chapter 5's hunger mechanics to the tectonic rifts of the wave's legendary. Every twister it unleashes, every feather that morphs into razor winds, it's all jerked by invisible strings. The antagonist's silhouette matches historical Darling depictions, a solitary figure with a hammer-like puppet stick in one hand, a coconut shell resonator in the other, eyes gleaming from beneath a batik headcloth. In the beta files, unused dialogue lines reference the Master of Shadows who bids the eagle dance, scrubbed from the final Hawaiian reskin. This puppetry motif echoes deeper than game design Easter eggs. It plunges us into Indonesia's pre-Islamic folklore, where spirits and genies ruled long before any Gen 5 trio darkened the skies. Forget Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kuram for a moment. Those Unova dragons drew from Taoist yin-yang dualities in 2011. Indonesia's unseen world predates that by centuries, woven into the animist tapestry of the archipelago before Hindu epics even arrived. Jinn, or genies, aren't the lamp-rubbing wish-granters of Arabian tales. They're hyperdimensional beings from pre-Hindu lore, shape-shifting predators born from smokeless fire, bound to ancient shamans who command them through rituals akin to puppet mastery. In Sumatran and Javanese manuscripts like the Serat Centini from the early 19th century, or even older Kejuan texts, whispered in Keraton palaces, these jinn manifest as bayang, living shadows that puppeteer mortals and beasts alike. The Dalang isn't just an entertainer, he's a semi-divine mediator, wrestling ethereal forces onto the screen. Picture a Keris-wielding puppeteer in a moonlit pendopo, his oil wick casting jinn silhouettes that claw at the air, forcing Garuda-like Kalong bats to dive on villages. These spirits demand tribute, blood rice, incense from Merbau wood, chants invoking the Queen of the Southern Seas, Nyai Roro Kidul, whose waves crash with the fury of Krakatoa. Predating Gen 5's ideological dragons, this lore shaped the Majapahit court's shadow plays, where emperors consulted jinn oracles via puppet battles to foresee wars against Siam or Java's rival sultans. Layer that onto Pokémon wins. The legendary's cry file. Isolate it, and beneath the whooshing gales lurks a gamelan undertone, metallophones clinking like puppet rods on a wooden box, the Suling flute wailing like a jinn summons. Beta testers from the 2024 build reported glitches where the wind's Pokémon froze mid-attack, strings visibly snapping from its joints to an off-screen hand. One anonymous post on the Leak Discord described it as creepy as hell, like the bird knows it's not in control, thrashing against the Dalang's will. Tie it to the Ring of Fire volcanics we unpacked last chapter. Puppet masters in folklore often dwell in Gunung Merapi craters, their genie minions stirring magma seas. The game's survival thirst meter spikes near those vents, hallucinations kicking in with shadow overlays, puppets reenacting jinn rebellions. Why hide this? The cultural pivot from Nusantara to Hawaii scrubbed the overt ties, but the engine betrays them. Those shadow animations aren't relics, they're active, modulating battle damage based on puppet alignment, a mechanic where misaligned shadows weaken movesets, as if the Dalang's grip slips. Imagine facing the Elite Four, their arenas lit like Wayang screens, your team ensnared in a folklore duel where genies predetermine the victors. And it all hinges on who pulls the strings or who cuts them. That brings us straight into Chapter 10, the 13-year-old protagonist, where a lottery-winning kid from Metropolis steps onto this shadowed stage, unknowingly challenging the Dalang himself. What happens when a child defies the ancient puppeteer? Stick around, you won't believe the vacancy slip that started it all. Those shadow puppet animations in the battle engine, flickering just beyond the edges of every high-level encounter, hint at a puppet master antagonist who's not just commanding the winds legendary from afar. No, this figure is woven into the fabric of the story itself, manipulating events through an unlikely vessel, a 13-year-old protagonist who stumbles into this tropical nightmare after winning a lottery vacation entered by their mother. Leaks confirm it. The kid arrives in a bustling metropolis, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide with that mix of excitement and naivety only a child on the cusp of adolescence can muster. But peel back the layers, and that age isn't random. It's a deliberate anchor to the lost history we're chasing, a numerical breadcrumb trail leading straight to the erased origins of the region. 13 years old. In Pokémon lore, ages have always carried subtle weight. Think 10-year-olds thrust into gym challenges across Kanto or Johto, symbolizing the dawn of maturity in a world of pocket monsters. But 13, that's no coincidence in a game laced with survival mechanics and whispers of ancient settlers. Datamined files from the 2024 beta build, the one scrapped under that mysterious cultural pivot, reveal dialogue trees where NPCs refer to the protagonist as the 13th heir or child of the zero cycle. It's cryptic, buried in unused text, but it screams intentional design. Why 13 specifically? Because it mirrors the generational countdown embedded in the region's suppressed mythology. The lost history here revolves around a cataclysm, a tectonic event tied to those ring of fire volcanoes we explored, that reset civilization 13 generations ago. Your protagonist isn't just any kid, their age positions them as the living embodiment of that reset, the final echo before the cycle repeats. This brings us to the Generation Zero theory, pieced together from cross-referencing those QA tester interviews and flora discrepancies like the Sumatran Lantana slip-up. Picture the original settlers of this Nusantara-inspired archipelago, not the Hawaiian veneer slapped on for the official reveal. These were maritime nomads, Austronesian voyagers who navigated the seas around 10,000 years ago, seeding islands with rice terraces, megalithic shrines, and oral epics now faded from the record. Generation Zero, that's the mythic founding cohort, the ones who first tamed the jungle's primal fury, binding legendaries like winds and waves to volcanic ley lines. Fast forward through 12 generations of decline. Eruptions bury temples, tsunamis swallow coasts, and corporate memory wipes in the Pokémon world erase it all under tropical paradise branding. Then comes your 13-year-old hero, born exactly 13 generations later. They're not a tourist by accident. Leaks show their mother hails from a hidden lineage, a lottery winner rigged pull by the puppet master to awaken the heir. Every survival choice the kid makes, rationing berries against hunger pangs, purifying stream water under relentless rain, reactivates ancestral memories, glitching the game's map to reveal overlaid beta assets. Stone calendars marking Gen Zero in Proto-Javanese script. Feel the chill in that setup. A 13-year-old, barely tall enough to peer over some of these towering ferns, forced to confront thirst mechanics that drain their stamina bar in real time, mirroring the dehydration horrors real explorers faced in Indonesia's inner isles. The psychological weight hits different on a younger character. Adult protagonists in survival games like those Arcane titles or the Zelda Wilds can grit through it with hardened resolve. But this kid? Their sprite animations betray it, trembling hands when hunger creeps in, widened eyes during thirst haze, a subtle voice line crackling with fatigue after nights evading territorial Pokémon in the canopy. Dev notes from the leaks describe it as empathy amplification. Players feel the vulnerability acutely because it's a child scavenging for grubs, bandaging wounds from thorn thickets that evoke the unforgiving Uluwatu cliffs. It's not just gameplay, it's narrative terror. Why saddle a preteen with base building in monsoon floods or crafting shelters from bamboo while eldritch winds howl? To hammer home the lost history's brutality. Generation Zero's descendants didn't survive through power fantasies. They endured as children did, wide-eyed and resilient, passing myths mouth to mouth until the puppet master's strings tried to sever them. Dive deeper into those mechanics, and the theory solidifies. Hunger isn't a simple meter. It ties to ancestral recall events, where low saturation triggers visions, holographic overlays of Gen Zero rituals, elders chanting to calm tectonic rumbles, their faces morphing into the protagonist's own. Thirst mechanics pull from real Sumatran folklore, where water spirits demand offerings, now gamified as puzzles solvable only by a pure lineage character. A 13-year-old's lighter frame means faster dehydration rates, forcing riskier paths through lava tubes, echoing Krakatoa's roar. Psychologically, it's masterful manipulation. Players report unease in playtests, that paternal urge to protect surges, making every failed forage feel personal. The kid's youth amplifies the primal dread, turning the tropical idyll into a pressure cooker of inherited trauma. They're not leveling up a powerhouse, they're reclaiming a birthright, one electrolyte packet at a time, as the puppet master watches from the shadows. And those shadows lead underground, don't they? Beneath the Metropolis where our young heir first sets foot, leaks hint at a labyrinthine network pulsing with Gen Zero relics, forgotten aquifers, bioluminescent fungi spelling out warnings in ancient glyphs. What secrets does the Metropolis underground hold that could shatter the Hawaiian facade for good? Stick around for Chapter 11, where we descend into that abyss and uncover what the board buried deepest. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. That 13-year-old protagonist, our supposed descendant of Generation Zero settlers from the original Nusantara vision, doesn't stay on the sunlit streets of Metropolis for long. A loose manhole cover in a back alley, kicked open during a frantic chase from lottery enforcers, drops you straight into the city's forgotten veins. What starts as a desperate escape turns into the real unraveling of this tropical paradise's facade. You splash into knee-deep effluent, the air thick with the tang of rust and rot, echoing drips from unseen pipes, amplifying every cautious step. Metropolis, that sprawling central hub, with its neon lottery billboards and palm-fringed promenades, hides its underbelly like a predator concealing claws. These aren't just maintenance tunnels, they're a warren of sewers and hidden passages, carved from the island's volcanic bedrock, long before the first high-rises pierced the sky. Graffiti scars the walls in faded scripts, some resembling ancient Batak runes from Sumatra's highlands, half eroded by decades of moisture. Your flashlight beam catches glints of bioluminescent fungi clinging to the arches, pulsing faintly like the deep-sea vents tied to the waves, legendary we discussed. Pushing deeper, the tunnels fork endlessly, some collapsing into natural lava tubes that twist toward the island's core. Whispers from those anonymous QA testers in the lost beta build echo here. They spoke of cultural pivots that buried these paths under layers of Hawaiian gloss. But follow the protagonist's path, and you'll navigate collapsed bulkheads from pre-release maps, squeezing through rusted grates that bar civilian access. The hum of the city above vibrates through the stone, a constant reminder that you're traversing the arteries feeding the beast. Sudden floods threaten from overflow drains during tropical storms, forcing split-second climbs onto precarious ledges slick with algae. It's survival gameplay at its rawest, demanding you attune to the rhythm of gushing water and distant rumbles, much like the tectonic law of Toba's cataclysm. Hours in, or what feels like it in the timeless dark, a side passage widens into something unnatural, a ritual chamber untouched by sewage. Cracked stone altars rise from the muck, etched with motifs of wind spirits puppeteered by unseen hands, echoing the Wayang Kulit animations we uncovered. These are the old world shrines, the sacred sites the city was built directly on top of, their foundations literally underpinning Metropolis's lottery temples. Vines from surface jungles have infiltrated through fissures, twisting around weathered idols depicting a serpent coiled around a flaming pearl, direct parallels to Indonesian Naga guardians, not some imported Hawaiian myth. Offerings petrified in place, shells arranged in star patterns mimicking the Ring of Fire's archipelago, and faded murals depicting a great deluge swallowing ancient ports. Touch one, and holographic echoes flicker to life in the game files, ghostly chants in a dialect blending Javanese and Proto-Malay, narrating a lost generation fleeing cataclysm to seed the islands anew. These shrines aren't relics, they're warnings. Inscriptions speak of a great selection, a lottery of fates where the unworthy were cast into the waves, mirroring the protagonist's own ticket to this nightmare vacation. Poke around the central altar, and a hidden mechanism grinds open, revealing a cache of dataminable artifacts, rusted amulets etched with Nusantara cartography, predating the official Hawaiian reveal by years. The developers layered them in as Easter eggs, perhaps remnants of that scrapped build, now pulsing with lore that ties your Generation Zero bloodline to these submerged holy grounds. The air grows colder here, charged with an otherworldly static, as if the wind's legendary stirs in protest against the concrete tomb above. But you're not alone. A scuffle echoes from the shadows, boots splashing, muffled voices barking coordinates. Outnumbered enforcers from the lottery syndicate patrol these depths, hunting anomalies like you. Then, from a concealed grate, figures emerge, ragged operatives in guerrilla camo, wielding improvised EMP launchers that short out pursuing drones. This marks your first encounter with the Resistance faction, an underground network fighting against the lottery organizers who rigged the entire island as their playground. Their leader, a scarred veteran with tattoos of fractured maps across his arms, sizes you up. Kid, you won their game by accident. We're crashing it for good. They speak in coded slang laced with regional inflections, hints of Balinese cadence beneath the tropical pidgin, forcing you to prove your worth by decoding a shrine puzzle that disables a nearby enforcer outpost. The Resistance pulls you into their fold, revealing blueprints of Metropolis's undergrid, tunnels linking to off-limits volcanic flanks, primed for sabotage. They've been sustaining off shrine-harvested fungi and smuggled provisions, their hideout a fortified nexus where holographic projections replay leaked beta footage of the original Nusantara hub. Questions burn. Why do they guard these old-world sites like Holy Grail? Their intel drops the bomb. The lottery isn't random, it's a cull echoing ancient rites from the shrines, selecting vessels for the legendary's awakening. You glimpse their arsenal, Pokeballs modded with shadow puppet tech, summoning spectral allies that mimic Wayang beasts. Trust builds slowly as they test you with a raid on a sewage pumping station, flooding enforcer barracks in a tide of reclaimed fury. As alliances solidify amid the dripping gloom, one Resistance mapper unrolls a tattered scroll from the deepest shrine. It charts a biogeographic divide slicing the archipelago, a barrier where flora and fauna shift unnaturally, guarding secrets that could shatter the official narrative forever. That scroll points straight to the Wallace line mystery in Chapter 12, where the true fault lines of this lost history converge, and what it hides might drown the lottery's lies for good. Those ancient shrines beneath Metropolis weren't just relics of forgotten worship. Etched into their weathered walls, we found maps, crude but unmistakable, dividing the archipelago into two halves, with symbols of beasts clustered on either side, never overlapping. This wasn't random artistry. It mirrored a real-world enigma that's puzzled biologists for over a century and a half, the Wallace Line. Named after Alfred Russel Wallace, the father of biogeography who charted it during his expeditions in the 1800s. This invisible boundary snakes through Indonesia, separating the fauna of Asia from that of Australia. To the west, you have tigers prowling Sumatra's jungles, orangutans swinging through Borneo, elephants thundering across Java. To the east, beyond the line, Komodo dragons stalk Flores, marsupials like cuscuses cling to Sulawesi's trees, and birds of paradise flaunt iridescent plumes in New Guinea's highlands. Deep ocean trenches and swift currents have kept these ecosystems isolated for millions of years, even as land bridges formed and receded during ice ages. Now, pause and consider the game's map. That sprawling tropical chain, teased in the trailers with its mist-shrouded peaks and coral-fringed shores. Players have already data-mined the encounter tables, and the pattern is chillingly precise. In the Western Islands, those closer to the game's Metropolis hub, you'll hunt through dense rainforests, teeming with Pokémon echoing Asian megafauna. Thunderous elephant-like behemoths with ivory tusks that charge in herds, sly fox spirits mimicking civets, even serpentine dragons coiled like pythons around banyan roots. Venture east past the Central Strait, and the roster flips entirely. Wallabies bounding across savannas, echidna-inspired rollers that curl into armored bulls, massive monitor lizard titans patrolling volcanic beaches. No overlap. Not a single Eastern exclusive Pokémon spawns west of that line, and vice versa. It's how the game's Pokémon distribution mimics the real-world biological divide in Indonesia, down to the species' behavioral quirks. Western Pokémon favor ambush tactics in undergrowth, leveraging claws and venom like Southeast Asia's predators. Eastern ones emphasize raw power and gliding flights, adapted to open terrains and island-hopping winds. Game Freak didn't just scatter them randomly for balance. They encoded Wallace's discovery into the DNA of exploration itself, turning every surf across that strait into a voyage between worlds. But here's where it gets uncanny: the biological glitch where certain species refuse to cross into the western half of the map. Take the data-mined Era Quill, a porcupine quill launcher that's exclusive to eastern scrublands. Force it westward via glitches or trades, and its animations stutter. Quills deploy sluggishly, as if fighting an unseen current. Combat logs show debuffs stacking inexplicably, speed drops, accuracy falters, until it collapses into a homesick faint, a mechanic never seen elsewhere. Conversely, the western Javangor, a gorilla-backed powerhouse, glitches eastward, its charges veer off course, smashing into invisible walls that the game renders as heat haze. Primo guides warn against it, calling these zones hostile biomes, but dig into the code, and you'll find hard-coded repulsion fields tied to longitude coordinates mirroring the Wallace line's exact coordinates, roughly 118 degrees east. This isn't a bug, it's deliberate. Those repulsion fields pulse with the same frequency as the wind's legendary's aura in battle intros, suggesting an ancient enforcement. What this tells us about the ancient separation of the winds and waves territories is profound. Long before Metropolis rose, these islands were battlegrounds for primordial forces, waves crashing from the deep, birthing coral citadels and tide-pulled beasts in the west, winds howling from austral voids, seeding marsupial hordes and flighted horrors in the east. The shrine's carvings depict a cataclysmic rift, a tectonic scar where sea levels surged, currents weaponized, stranding life on opposing shores. The Wallace line isn't natural happenstance. It's a scar from that war, preserved in the genes of creatures too stubborn or too terrified to cross. Dataminers cross-referenced it with the trailer footage. That flock of paradisiacal birds wheeling over eastern spires. Real rainbow lorikeets from Aru Islands, east of the line. The prowling cats in western glades. Sumatran tigers pure and simple. Even the fish schools in dividing straits split by pallet swaps. Barracuda west, parrotfish east, echo the marine divide, Wallace noted, where reef builders halt at the trench. Players report eerie phenomena too. Surf east to west with a mixed party, and audio cues warp. Eastern cries distort into hollow echoes, as if drowned out by roaring straits. The waves theme swells, laced with submarine rumbles hinting at abyssal guardians enforcing the barrier. Trade an eastern Pokémon into a western box. It grays out, flagged extinct lineage, unlocking lore entries about the Great Sundering, a myth tying back to those Metropolis shrines. This divide explains the legendary's duality. Winds commands the East's chaotic, airborne legions, gliders, burrowers, flyers unbound by gravity's tyranny. Waves anchors the West's submerged empires, leviathans, crawlers, shapers of stone through endless tides. Their ancient separation wasn't conquest, it was partition, a truce etched into the Earth's crust, with Pokémon as living sentinels. Cross the line unlawfully, and you trigger invasion events, rare encounters where hybrid shadows flicker, aborted fusions that crash the engine, whispering of what happens when territories bleed. The deeper you probe those encounter tables, the more it unravels. Specific evolutions lock behind biome checks. A western tadpole refuses to mega-evolve east, its tail wilting like salt-poisoned roots. Eastern seeds sprout barbed traps, only in arid soils, failing in humid west. It's a simulation of speciation, millions of years compressed into code, proving the developers studied Wallace's journals not just for flavor, but to hide the archipelago's true blueprint. Those shrines under Metropolis. Their maps glow under UV light in-game, revealing migratory arrows halted mid-stride by a glowing fissure, the Wallace line incarnate. Inscriptions in Proto-Javanese script translate roughly to the twins divided. Breath from storm, surge from abyss. Winds and waves forever sundered, their children bound by the same invisible chains. And it begs the question, what myths did those original settlers whisper to enforce this divide? What forgotten stories lurk in the game's unexcavated lore dumps, waiting to rewrite Gen 10's genesis? Next, in Chapter 13, The Forgotten Mythos, we'll unearth those very tales, shadowed epics that name the twins, and reveal why Metropolis was built to bury them. You won't want to miss how it all connects. As those Pokémon on the eastern side of the map stubbornly refuse to cross the Wallace line, pressing west into the shadowed half triggers something glitchy, almost deliberate, a barrier not just of code, but of forgotten memory etched into the game's very foundations. Dataminers who pushed deeper into those restricted zones found walls in the western ruins textured with murals, fragmented images half buried under layers of procedural generation. These aren't random assets, they're deliberate relics pieced together from dozens of scattered PNG files, revealing a creation myth for the Gen 10 region that Game Freak buried deep in the code. You can almost feel the humidity clinging to the air as you trace those textures yourself. Start with the central panel, a vast, unbroken landmass under a sky split between churning clouds and serene blue. Primal Pokémon roam freely. No Pokéballs, no trainers, just herds of ancient beasts grazing across what looks like a supercontinent, fringed by jagged volcanoes spewing rivers of lava into calm seas. But zoom in on the edges, and the fragments align to show rising waters, not from rain, but from colossal waves summoned by a serpentine figure coiled at the horizon. The wave's legendary, its body a vortex of turquoise scales and foaming crests, rears up like a god of retribution, eyes glowing with the fury of submerged empires. Reconstructing this myth takes hours of Photoshop layering, aligning faded glyphs that match Javanese script from 900-year-old Borobudur reliefs. The story unfolds in sequences. First, harmony. The land bridges teem with life, a paradise where humans and Pokémon forge the original bonds, building shrines that echo the ones we glimpsed under Metropolis. Villages cluster around hot springs, their roofs thatched with giant leaves from flora we flagged back in the Lantana slip-up. Sumatran endemics thriving in this pre-flood Eden. Elders commune with wind spirits, precursors to the wind's legendary, whispering prophecies of balance. Then the rupture. Human hubris, overhunting, delving too deep into volcanic caves, awakens the wave's guardian. Its coils tighten around the land's heart, and the flood begins. Not a gentle tide, but cataclysmic swells that swallow coastlines whole, carving islands from a single body. The murals capture the panic, fleeing figures clutching glowing orbs, proto-Pokéballs. As their world fractures, Pokémon scatter, some diving into the depths with waves, others carried eastward on rafts by wind currents. The final panel, cracked and incomplete, shows a lone survivor washed ashore on a jagged peak, clutching a sapling that would become the region's first sacred tree. This isn't abstract lore, it mirrors the drowning of Sunderland with eerie precision. 12,000 years ago, melting ice caps raised sea levels by over 400 feet, submerging that vast shelf connecting Indonesia's islands into one fertile cradle of civilization. Homo floresiensis footprints fossilized there, alongside megafauna bones, echoes of those mural beasts. The wave's legendary embodies that deluge, not as a villain, but as the enforcer of cycles, destroying the old world to birth the archipelago we explore in Gen 10. Its role in the original destruction? Central. Leaks from the battle engine show it summoning tidal arenas mid-fight, pulling textures from these very murals to flood the screen, a meta-nod to erasure. Dataminers cross-reference the glyphs. Laut Menelantana translates to "the sea swallows the land," a phrase ripped from Minangkabau flood epics whispered in West Sumatra. Why hide it? Because admitting this mythos ties the game's Hawaiian veneer to Indonesia's submerged past cracks the official narrative wide open. Those western ruins aren't just backdrop, they're time capsules, the protagonist's 13-year-old eyes, descended from those flood survivors destined to unearth them. As you navigate the glitchy divide, Wave's silhouette flickers in loading screens, hinting it's not gone, just waiting beneath the waves for its return. Piece by piece, these murals rewrite Gen 10's genesis, transforming a tropical vacation sim into a requiem for lost continents. The shadow puppets from the Wayang Kulit code. They animate these flood scenes in hidden cutscenes, the puppet master antagonist revealed as Wave's harbinger, strings of water pulling the legend back to finish what it started. Feel the weight of that waterlogged history pressing down, the game's survival elements suddenly making sense. You're not vacationing, you're reliving the end times. And just when these fragments seem too shattered to hold meaning, a hardware anomaly surfaces in Switch 2 dev kits, leaking specs that embed this mythos into the console itself. Coming up in Chapter 14, the Switch 2 hardware leak, where one overlooked port hides coordinates to Indonesia's real-world dive sites. Those fragmented murals of the Great Flood weren't mere backstory. They were a blueprint for a living, breathing Sunderland reborn, a drowned continent teeming with secrets that no console before the Switch 2 could hope to contain. Leaks from the hardware reveal hit like a thunderclap last month, exposing specs that shatter the limits of what we've known. We're talking a custom NVIDIA processor clocked at over 2 GHz, with tensor cores dedicated to real-time procedural generation that laughs in the face of the Switch 1's meager 400 MHz ARM setup. You feel the shift when you grasp why developers held back for so long. The original Switch choked on anything denser than sparse foliage. Its GPU, the aging Maxwell architecture, maxed out at 256 gigaflops, barely enough to handle static forests with pre-baked assets. Try rendering a true Indonesian rainforest, the kind where ancient dipterocarp trees tower 200 feet high, their buttressed roots snaking through undergrowth thick as a living wall, vines dripping with epiphytes, and ferns unfurling in perpetual humidity. The leaf count alone, trillions of polygons per square kilometer, would have melted the old hardware. Draw distances capped at a few hundred meters meant horizons dissolved into fog, hiding the endless canopy layers that define places like Borneo or Sumatra. Procedural generation. Forget it. The Switch 1's RAM, a paltry 4 GB shared between system and game, couldn't hold the noise algorithms, fractal branching, or erosion simulations needed to spawn unique biomes on the fly without hitching to a crawl. But the Switch 2 changes everything. That leaked die shot shows unified memory ballooning to 12 GB of LPDDR5X, fast enough to stream terabytes of terrain data from microSD without a stutter. The real magic hides in the ray tracing accelerators and machine learning tensor units, trained on satellite imagery of real Indonesian wilds. They enable infinite jungle, a system where every tree, every bromeliad-cloaked branch, every mud-slicked trail generates procedurally, seeded by player position and weather cycles. No loading screens, no pop-in, just an endless expanse where you hack through rattan thickets one moment, then emerge onto misty karst peaks the next, all while Pokémon flit through the understory, their behaviors adapting to the hyper-realistic ecology. It's not just power, it's intelligence. The chip's neural engine predicts canopy density, simulates wind rustling 30 layers deep, and even models bioluminescent fungi glowing under moonlit leaves, pulling from a dataset of Sunderland's lost biodiversity. Then there's the heat map leak, the one that surfaced on that obscure 4-channel forum, timestamped from Nintendo's internal stress tests. It wasn't a pretty thermal overlay, it was a god's eye view of the unannounced archipelago, sprawling across what must be thousands of square kilometers. Reds and oranges bled into the central jungle mass, indicating sustained 80% utilization for hours, cooling fans whirring like tropical storms. The map outlined over 50 islands, strung like emeralds along a Wallace line divide, with heat spikes where the procedural engine ramps up. Volcanic rims belching procedural lava flows, mangrove labyrinths flooding with tidal sims, and that core infinite jungle zone pulsing like a heartbeat. Scale it against Breath of the Wild's Hyrule, tripled in fidelity and infinite in replayability. Previous hardware would have thermal throttled in minutes under that load. The Switch 2's vapor chamber and graphene heatsink hold steady, unlocking a world where the floodwaters receded not in myth, but in code. This isn't speculation. Data miners cross-reference the heat signatures with leaked archipelago wireframes, confirming the jungle's heartbeats with algorithms borrowed from geospatial AI, the kind used to map submerged Sunderland ruins today. Imagine your team weaving through it, a ferroligate variant bursting from peat bogs, its cry echoing off emergent dipterocarps, while rare endemics like proboscis monkey-inspired Pokémon swing overhead, their paths dictated by real-time wind physics. The old Switch faked openness with tricks, corridors disguised as wilds, assets recycled ad nauseum. Here, entropy rules. Fallen logs sprout moss in seconds, rivers carve new paths after rains, and clearings bloom with rafflesia the size of dinner plates, their stench almost palpable through the speakers. The leak ties back to those murals perfectly. The Great Flood didn't erase Sunderland. It preserved it in silicon, waiting for hardware worthy of resurrection. Whispers in the data stream hint at even wilder feats, like dynamic species migration across the archipelago, mirroring Wallace's faunal divide. But as we push deeper into this reborn world, the jungle's veins lead to something older, traded through shadows long before Pokémon roamed. Up next in Chapter 15, The Spice Trade Law, we'll uncover how ancient roots smuggled not just cloves and nutmeg, but the very legends that birthed this region's forgotten guardians. Stay with me, because the scent of that history is about to overwhelm everything. With the Switch 2's raw processing muscle finally rendering those infinite jungles in breathtaking detail, you push deeper into the canopy, where the air hangs thick with the scent of damp earth and something sharper, more exotic. Vines part like secrets long guarded, revealing clusters of shimmering berries and pods that your Pokémon instinctively clutch. These aren't random pickups. They're held items, the kind that savvy trainers hoard for battle edges, but dig into their flavor text, and a pattern emerges, one that reeks of old-world commerce. Take the Clove Cluster, for instance. It boosts fire-type moves by 20%, while clinging to your Pokémon's fur like a stubborn ember. Nutmeg Husk follows suit, hardening defenses against poison with a gritty, aromatic shell. Then there's the Mace Pod, rare as a whisper in the eastern wilds, amplifying speed for those frantic jungle chases. Peppercorn Sprig rounds it out, sharpening attack stats amid the humid haze. These aren't coincidences plucked from a dev's brainstorming session. They're direct echoes of the Moluccas' golden triad: cloves, nutmeg, mace, pepper, the very spices that turned Indonesia's remote islands into the prize of empires. Held items functioning as historical commodities, dropped strategically across the map's divided biomes, mimicking how those spices once defined invisible trade lines through treacherous seas. You pocket a few during your first forage run, and that's when the game's economy starts whispering back. Vendors in the coastal outposts jack up prices based on supply chains you disrupt. Flooding markets with clove clusters crashes the local berry rate, just like oversupply sank spice fortunes in the 16th century. It's subtle at first, a ripple in your poker dollars, but as you stockpile, the world reacts. Ancient murals in vine-choked ruins depict Pokémon hauling these payloads on makeshift rafts, their eyes hollow with the weight of it all. The developers wove this in deliberately, a breadcrumb trail leading you to question what's really being traded here. Follow those trails long enough, and they converge on a weathered guild hall in the shadow of a smouldering volcano, its banners fluttering like forgotten charters. This is where the real questline ignites, a sprawling chain of commissions from the Archipelago Trade Consortium, a merchant guild that could have stepped straight out of Amsterdam's smoky boardrooms. You start small, ferrying peppercorn sprigs across the Wallace Line's glitchy divide, dodging rival smugglers who ambush your raft with watertight barrages. Success unlocks bigger hauls, nutmeg convoys through storm-lashed straits, where your team battles privateer Pokémon enforcing blockades. The guild masters greet you with oily smiles and ledgers etched in Pokeball ink, demanding fealty oaths that lock you into exclusive contracts. Branch out to independence, and their agents sabotage your routes. Branch out dependence, and their agents sabotage your routes, sinking cargoes, framing you for poaching. It's a mirror to the Dutch East India Company, down to the monopolistic grip. VOC parallels scream from every dialogue tree. Armed fleets crewed by loyal Pokémon, forts sprouting on spice atolls like the ones at Banda and Ternate. Complete the arc, and you're granted a company-branded ship, your avatar's journal filling with entries about perpetual peace through profitable dominance. But peel back the varnish, and the guild's vaults hide ledgers stained darker than volcanic ash. That's the pivot to the shadows the questline casts. As you climb the ranks, side quests peel open the region's colonial underbelly, revealing the dark history of Pokémon labor that fueled it all. Deep in the guild's sub-levels, you find chained journals recounting how early settlers, descendants of those Generation Zero pioneers we traced back in the sewers, conscripted wild Pokémon into plantation drudgery. Imagine teams of sturdy ground types like Donphan yoked to plough terraced hillsides under the equatorial blaze, their hides scarred from overseer whips fashioned from vine whip tendrils. Electric types, those flickering Pikachu ancestors, wired the drying sheds with perpetual jolts to cure the harvest faster, their cheeks sparking exhaustion until they collapsed into smouldering heaps. Flying squads, Pidgeot lines bred for endurance, airlifted crates across the archipelago, wings frayed from endless loops, plummeting into the Java Sea when their strength gave out. The flavor text hits hardest on the exotic breeds, imported legendaries from distant realms, bound by prototype Pokeballs into hauling the most volatile loads, their roars muffled by guild-enforced silence berries. Mutated strains emerge in the lore dumps, Pokémon warped by forced interbreeding to maximize yield, hulking hybrids with clove cluster thorns piercing their own flanks, forever boosting output at the cost of their wild spark. Rebellions flicker through fragmented holotapes, an uprising led by a spectral superior spirit, torching warehouses in a blaze of leaf storm fury, only to be crushed by company-backed legendaries. The guild quests culminate in a choice: pledge deeper loyalty for rare evolutions, or sabotage the monopoly, freeing labor camps in explosive set pieces that reshape the map's economy. These threads aren't filler. They're the connective tissue binding the jungle's infinite sprawl to Indonesia's blood-soaked trade legacy, where fortunes rose on the backs of the exploited human and Pokémon alike. And as you sift through the guild's final trove, a ciphered scroll catches your eye, etched with motifs from a colossal stone mandala far inland. That scroll points straight to the Borobudur cipher, a puzzle that could unlock the game's true endgame mythos, if you dare decode its galactic secrets first. Those merchant guild quests in Metropolis don't just end with a fat stack of spice-scented held items, they lead you straight into the city's forgotten core, where the ground beneath your feet hums with ancient precision. You've traded cloves for rare berries, nutmeg for evolution stones, all while unraveling the Dutch echoes in the dialogue trees. But as the guildmaster hands over that final ledger, etched with symbols that look suspiciously like faded Javanese script, he whispers about a district locked away behind vine-choked gates. The Temple District. Not just ruins, but a cipher carved into the very streets of this sprawling hub. You push through the undergrowth, your Pokémon at your side, flashlight beam cutting through humid mist that clings to mossy stupus. The layout hits you first, it's no random scatter of pagodas. Metropolis's Temple District unfolds in perfect symmetry, a massive central platform ringed by 5 concentric terraces, each stepped like a mandala frozen in stone. Walk the paths, and your in-game compass glitches, aligning not to magnetic north, but to precise cardinal points marked by towering gateways. Count the shrines, 504 on the lower levels alone, spiraling up to 72 perforated stupas on the top circle. It's deliberate. meticulous, a blueprint begging to be decoded. And decode it you do by overlaying the district's map onto real-world satellite imagery. Pull up the coordinates from the game's data files. Those sneaky devs hid them in the procedural jungle generator's seed values. Line it up, scale it to 1:1, and there it is. An exact replica of Borobudur, the world's largest Buddhist temple, squatting on Java's volcanic plains since the 9th century. The alignments are uncanny. The main axis of Metropolis's district mirrors Borobudur's east-west orientation, dead on with the sunrise on the equinox. Those 5 terraces, identical to Borobudur's, each representing a stage of Buddhist enlightenment, from base desires to pure karma. Even the numbers sync: 9 stacked platforms in total, 460 smaller shrines, mirroring the temple's narrative reliefs, over 2,000 panels depicting the life of Siddhartha, now repurposed as Pokémon evolutions tied to enlightenment themes. Zoom in closer on the data mine, and the math screams intention. The perimeter of the temple district's outer wall measures precisely 921 meters, echoing Borobudur's footprint down to the centimeter when scaled by the game's internal unit grid. The stupa count isn't arbitrary either, 72 atop the circle, each perforated with 204 holes, totaling 44,864 apertures. Back to that against Borobudur's own 9 stupas with 32 holes apiece. It's a harmonic multiple, a fractal echo designed to resonate during specific celestial events. The devs didn't just copy, they encoded the temple's cosmic geometry into the city's bones, turning Metropolis from a modern Pokémon hub into a living astrolabe. But why? Follow the Merchant Guild's final breadcrumb, a rusted key that unlocks a hidden panel in the central stupa, and you trigger the sequence. The screen fades to a meditative haze, your party Pokémon glowing faintly as the camera pulls back. That's when the Nirvana mechanic reveals itself, buried deep in the eclipse-timed event code. It only activates during the game's simulated solar eclipse, which syncs to real-world calendars. Mark your Switch 2 for the next one in 2027, right around launch. As the moon devours the sun overhead, shadows from the stupas align perfectly, casting beams that illuminate a secret chamber beneath the district's heart. Inside, your screen fractures into a kaleidoscope of light, and every Pokémon in your active party enters a state of temporary transcendence. Stats don't just boost, they transcend caps entirely. Attack scales exponentially with purity levels, derived from a hidden karma meter tracked across the entire playthrough. Did you release Pokémon from the PC too long? Skip those side quests helping wild muns. It all feeds in. Speed hits relativistic velocities, evasion becomes probabilistic nirvana, dodging hits like they're illusions. Held items from the spice trade glow, amplifying effects. That clove pouch now purifies status ailments instantly. Nutmeg evolves unevolved team members mid-battle without stones. Lasts only as long as the eclipse, 5 minutes of real-time dominance, turning boss fights into poetry. Dataminas cracked the trigger last month, confirming it's gated behind 100% district exploration. Scan every relief panel, 2,600 exactly. Each whispering lore fragments about Sunderland's submersion, tying back to the Great Flood myth we pieced together earlier. Miss one, and the eclipse passes without fanfare. Nail it, and Nirvana floods the screen with Borobudur's own Kala Makara motifs. Demons devouring the sun, now rendered as glitch art silhouettes of legendary Pokémon. Your team emerges changed, with permanent buffs, a subtle aura that lingers, boosting encounters in the infinite jungle by 15% harmony. This cipher isn't decoration, it's the game's soul, a mathematical mandala aligning fictional Metropolis with Borobudur's eternal vigil. The temple district doesn't just mirror the world's largest Buddhist monument, its stupas pulse with the same seismic frequencies recorded at the real site, vibrations that shake your controller during the event. Feel that rumble? It's Java calling through the code, whispering that Gen 10's lost history isn't buried, it's architecturally alive, waiting for you to eclipse the veil. And as the shadows lift, a spectral figure flickers in the chamber's depths, vanishing before you can scan it. That's our cue for Chapter 17, the ghost of Gen 10. Who haunts the cipher's core, and what unfinished business ties it to Indonesia's drowned empires? Stick around. You won't believe the apparition's true form. Those ancient alignments in Metropolis weren't crafted in a vacuum. They were born from the obsession of one man, a lead designer named Akira Tanaka, whose final project would haunt Gen 10 forever. Tanaka had poured his life into the game's audio landscape, insisting that the tropical heart of the region demanded authenticity no data-mined asset could fake. In early 2026, he booked a solo research trip to Bali, chasing the raw pulse of gamelan orchestras amid the island's mist-shrouded temples. He vanished there, without a trace. His last email to the team, a cryptic note about sounds that bend time backward. Colleagues pieced together fragments from his hotel logs. Tanaka had rented a scooter, heading into the rice-terraced highlands near Ubud, where gamelan troops still echo through volcanic nights. His phone pinged once more near a sacred spring, then silence. Search parties combed the jungles, but Bali's authorities called it a hiking accident, closing the case after 2 weeks. Back at Game Freak's Kyoto studios, his desk sat untouched, sketches of reversed waveforms scribbled across napkins, stained with Kopi Luwak drips. Whispers spread among the devs. Had the island claimed him, or had he uncovered something the game wasn't meant to hold? When beta builds leaked months later, modders unearthed the smoking gun in the sound files, buried in uncompressed folders labeled Ambient Reject. Bin, they found cursed assets, traditional gamelan music played in reverse, not your standard backmasking gimmick, but full ensembles, bronze metallophones clanging, gongs booming in slow, inverted decay. Plead forward. It's joyous, a hypnotic rhythm for shadow puppet epics. Reversed, it warps into something primal, whispers slithering through detuned chimes like spirits clawing from the underworld. One clip, time-stamped the day before Tanaka's disappearance, layers human voices, or are they? Chanting in Old Balinese, pleading against a flood that never recedes. Data miners who isolated these tracks reported glitches on their rigs. Emulators crashed with phantom audio loops, speakers humming at frequencies that rattled windows. One forum post, now deleted, claimed the reverse gamelan triggered sleep paralysis in testers, visions of endless jungles where paths looped back on themselves. Game Freak patched them out before launch, but not before they seeped into the final build's underbelly. Load a quiet save in Metropolis at midnight. Crank the volume, and listen close, you might catch an echo, faint as a held breath. This spectral thread weaves straight into the Lost History side quests, those optional chains dismissed as filler by speedrunners. Start them innocently enough, a mural puzzle in the Temple District, aligning stones to reveal faded glyphs. But push deeper, and the psychological horror unfolds. Your trainer's journal fills with unprompted entries, recounting dreams of a designer lost in green hell, his voice narrating failures of forgotten expeditions. Pokémon behave erratically. Your starter refuses commands near water, staring at ripples that form Tanaka's face. One quest, Echoes of the Spring, sends you to a hidden grotto mirroring Bali's sacred pools. Collect reversed gamelan shards, and the music swells, inverting your map. Landmarks shift, Metropolis's spires twist into Borobudur's stupas, but rotting, overgrown. NPCs recite Merchant Guild logs from earlier chapters, their dialogue glitching into Balinese incantations. The payoff? A boss encounter not against a Pokémon, but a shadow self, your avatar confronting the designer's ghost, accusing you of trespassing on drowned Sunderland's graves. Players who completed it spoke of lingering dread. Forums buzzed with accounts of insomnia, jungle sounds invading real-life nights. One streamer quit mid-playthrough, mic picking up reversed gongs from his own speakers unplugged. The quest ends abruptly. No fanfare, just a journal note, Some histories reverse to consume you. Critics called it experimental horror, too subtle for mainstream, but insiders knew it was Tanaka's final cut, smuggled past QA. These layers don't just unsettle, they mirror Gen 10's core terror, the jungle that proceduralizes your paranoia. Every rustle in the foliage, every off-key note, questions what's code and what's curse. Devs who worked with Tanaka still avoid Bali trips, joking about the Wallace line extending to their nightmares. And as the temple echoes fade, the real trial begins, not decoding ciphers or chasing ghosts, but enduring the wilds themselves. Up next in Chapter 18, the Survivalist's Handbook reveals the gritty mechanics and hidden tips that turn vacationers into jungle kings, or break them entirely. What secrets does it hold for those who dare venture beyond Metropolis? Stay with me. Those eerie gamelan echoes in the sound files aren't just haunting ambience, they're woven into the game's core survival mechanics, pulling you straight from the vanished designer's Bali nightmares into the heart of the infinite jungle. Tucked away in a hidden menu, unlocked only after your first brush with the undergrowth, lies the Survivalist's Handbook, a weathered digital grimoire that flips the Pokémon formula on its head. No more Pokeballs tossed from afar. Here, you're the fragile intruder, scavenging and synthesizing to stay alive. The crafting system demands you become an apothecary first, a forager attuned to the jungle's pharmacy. Every potion, every bandage, every stamina booster traces back to Indonesia's ancient Jamu traditions, those herbal elixirs brewed for centuries by Dayak healers and Javanese shamans. Picture this: you hack through ferns heavy with dew, spotting the broad leaves of kuniat, turmeric roots pulsing orange beneath the soil. Grind them with J, fresh ginger that burns your nostrils, as you mash it on a flat stone, then bind with Sambaloto's bitter greens to brew an anti-venom serum. One wrong ratio, and it festers into poison. Get it right, and it neutralizes the sting from a rogue Arbok variant lurking in the vines. But it's not just healing, the system layers in buffs drawn from the archipelago's pharmacopoeia. Lenkua's galangal roots sharpen your evasion, letting you dodge through root tangles like a shadow. Dawn's salam bay leaves simmered into a tea heighten your senses, turning the humid air thick with the musk of hidden threats. The handbook lists over 50 plants, each with harvest windows tied to the procedural day's cycle: dawn for fragile sambang nyawa, dusk for potent temulawak. Miss the timing, and the jungle claims them, forcing you back to base camp with empty satchels. This isn't casual grinding, it's a rhythm you learn or die to, mirroring how Indonesian tribes sync with the forest's pulse. Their knowledge passed in whispers around firelight. Layered atop that is the imperative to read the jungle itself, a skill the handbook drills into you through cryptic sketches and survival logs, allegedly penned by our lost designer during his Bali descent. Apex predators don't announce themselves with roars, they whisper in the signs. A snapped liana dangling too low signals a pathway favored by massive sork evolutions, their stone fists cracking bark like thunderclaps remembered. Puddles rimmed in iridescent oil. Saltwater croc-inspired Gyarados kin have stirred the shallows, their scales shedding that telltale sheen. The air goes unnaturally still, birdsong snuffed. That's your cue for a tiger-striped luxray stalking the canopy, eyes like embers piercing the gloom. You train this literacy through trial scars. Venture too deep without noting the bent reeds marking croc slides, and you're dragged under in a blur of thrashing water. Ignore the claw gouges on low branches, and the luxray pounces mid-leap, forcing a desperate craft from whatever herbs you clutch. The handbook's page is yellow with urgency, warning of the veil, that threshold where the jungle's script shifts from hospitable to hostile, demanding you interpret scat piles steaming with half-digested berries, or the unnatural hush where cicadas should scream. And here's the gut punch that shatters every Pokémon expectation. In the deep jungle, beyond the veil, your team turns. Those loyal companions, raised from eggs in Metropolis's safe glow, shed their friendship like molted skin. The Handbook reveals it starkly: exposure to the primal core corrupts their bonds, twisting obedience into feral instinct. Your starter, once nuzzling your leg, now circles with bared fangs, eyes glazing to wild amber under the canopy's pressure. It's not betrayal, it's reversion, the jungle reclaiming its own, echoing Sunderland's drowned wilds where no human pact endures. You fight not just beasts, but the unraveling of your arsenal, forced to sedate or evade your own Pokémon with those hard-won Jamu drafts. This handbook isn't a sidebar. It's your lifeline, binding craft, caution, and the brutal truth that survival means shedding illusions of mastery. As the designer's notes fade into static, one final entry hints at the lottery that stranded you here. A rigged ticket to this verdant hell. What shadows pulled those strings? That's the unraveling in Chapter 19, the Great Lottery Conspiracy. As you brew those poultices from the jungle's hidden herbs, the bitter tang of jambu air leaves on your tongue, sharpening your senses against the tiger-like shadows stalking the underbrush. One question lingers like mist over the canopy. How did a kid from the bustling streets of Metropolis end up stranded in this primal wilderness? Lottery ticket clutched in hand. Your story kicks off in that gleaming city, where neon holograms flicker over crowded markets, and the air hums with the chatter of vendors hawking exotic fruits. Mom, scraping by in her modest apartment, spots the ad on every screen. Enter the Great Waves Lottery, win a lifetime adventure to the ultimate tropical escape. She punches in your name on a whim, dreaming of sun-soaked beaches far from the grind. Days later, the win hits: a private jet, luxury villa, the works. But peel back the glamour, and the truth unravels like a frayed vine. That vacation wasn't bankrolled by some faceless charity or game show gimmick. Dig into the fine print of the lottery's charter, buried in corporate filings from a shell company called Oceanic Horizons, and you find the strings lead straight to the heart of the Waves development team. Not the public-facing Nintendo branch, but a covert research arm tucked away in a nondescript lab on the outskirts of Tokyo, funded through shadowy grants. They call it the Waves Initiative, a black-budget project blending procedural generation with something far older, whispers of ancient oceanic tech pulled from forgotten Pacific archives. Oceanic Horizons? It's the lottery front, laundering millions into this research. Every ticket sold funneled cash, not just to prizes, but to scanning entrance DNA under the guise of eligibility verification. Harmless swab, they said, to confirm you're human in an age of deepfakes. But those samples went straight to the lab, cross-referenced against relic databases smuggled from Southeast Asian digs. Why? Because the Wave's legendary research isn't about shiny new Pokémon or survival mechanics. It's chasing echoes of a lost civilization, seals etched into sunken stone that guard powers beyond the game's code, tidal forces that could reshape coastlines, harnessed through biology. And here's where you, the protagonist, snap into focus. That 13-year-old lotto winner isn't random. Your bloodline matches the profile they hunted for years, a rare haplotype traced to ancient mariners who navigated the Sunder Shelf before it drowned under rising seas. Call it the mark of the tides, genetic markers dormant in your veins, activated only in the presence of those jungle relics. The lottery wasn't luck, it was bait. They lured you to the islands to turn you into the biological key, your touch, or a drop of blood, the catalyst to crack open seals hidden in the procedural depths. Picture the first glitchy cutscene after the plane crash. You stagger from the wreckage, pulse racing, and press your palm to a vine-choked monolith, half buried in sand. The screen shudders, waves of light ripple out, unlocking not just a new area, but a cascade of forbidden lore. Gamelan tones warp into something subsonic, syncing with your controller's rumble, as if the game senses your real-world grip. Data miners later pulled strings of code referencing keybearer protocol, tying your avatar's stats to simulated vitals, heart rate spikes from in-game peril, mirroring your own if hooked to peripherals. The researchers knew the Switch 2's neural net jungle couldn't fully render the seals without a human anchor. Procedural algos generate infinite biomes, but the ancients' locks demand organic resonance, frequencies only your lineage carries. Leaked memos from the vanished Bali researcher, the one from Chapter 17, detail expeditions to Komodo and beyond, mapping blood rituals from oral histories. He vanished chasing a prophecy. The child who reads the jungle will wake the deep. Every craft you make now carries double weight. Those medicinal plants. They're not just heals, they're primers, tuning your avatar's biology to interface with the seals. Avoid the apex predators not for survival alone, but to preserve the key intact. One slash from spectral fangs, and the markers degrade, locking you out of endgame truths. Corporate denials pile up. Oceanic horizons dissolved post-launch, lottery chalked to marketing hype. Yet player forums buzz with anomalies. Kids with Southeast Asian ancestry reporting vivid dreams post-playthrough, controller inputs triggering unpatched events. The Waves team stayed silent, but patch notes hint at biological sync optimizations, code for refining the key. This conspiracy threads through the core loop, turning every win into a revelation. Your mum's entry. Engineered nudge from targeted ads, profiling your family's migration history. The jet, piloted by an NPC with Waves initiative tattoos glimpsed in Ultra HD. You're not playing a game, you're the fulcrum in a digital excavation, blood unlocking what hardware alone can't touch. Feel that pull now as the jungle whispers secrets only you can hear, drawing you toward depths where continents once connected. What lies beneath those procedural waves in the sunken ruins of Sunda? I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. That lottery corporation didn't just hand out vacations, they bankrolled expeditions into the uncharted waves, chasing whispers of the legendary Pokémon tied to the title, Waves. And as the protagonist's journey unfolds, those funds unlock something far more perilous. Access to the submerged underbelly of the map, where the ocean floor hides not just shipwrecks but entire forgotten epochs. You slip beneath the surface early in the game, equipped with a makeshift aqualung crafted from those jungle herbs we talked about last time, brewing a potion that lets your character hold breath for hours, filtering oxygen through bioluminescent algae harvested from tide pools. The water starts turquoise and inviting, sunlight fracturing into shimmering shafts that dance across coral spires, rising like the spires of drowned cathedrals. But push deeper past the schools of tropical fish that dart like living confetti, and the map reveals its true scale, vast underwater segments sprawling across what feels like kilometers of the game world, segmented by treacherous currents and pressure drops that demand precise navigation. These aren't simple swimming levels. The developers layered in survival mechanics here too. Your oxygen meter ticks down faster amid volcanic vents spewing scalding bubbles, and shadowy silhouettes of apex sea predators circle if you stray too close to their hunting grounds. You learn to read the currents, hugging the lee of ancient reefs that pulse with faint glows from embedded crystals. It's here, amid the muffled roar of the deep, that the map's topology shifts from Hawaiian postcard vibes to something ancient and Indonesian, echoing the real-world Sunda Shelf, that vast continental plateau swallowed by rising seas 10,000 years ago, linking Sumatra, Java, and Borneo in a land bridge lost to time. Deeper still, the seafloor drops into chasms lined with jagged basalt, and that's when you spot them. Colossal stone faces emerging from silt, half-buried archways carved with motifs no modern Pokémon scholar recognizes. These are the remains of a civilization that predates the Pokémon world's known history. Structures predating even the myths of the Creation Trio or the Kalos War. Massive ziggurats tilted on their sides, their steps encrusted with barnacles, stairways leading nowhere but into the abyss. Bas reliefs depict humanoid figures commanding serpentine beasts, their eyes inlaid with pearls that catch your flashlight beam and gleam unnaturally, as if watching you back. Run your hand virtually across those weathered stones, and faint glyphs activate, projecting holographic echoes, spectral Pokémon from an era before Pokeballs, roaming free in a world where trainers were shamans binding spirits with chants and offerings. Carbon dating side quests unlocked via the Merchant Guild's archives peg these ruins to over 20,000 years old, clashing with the official Pokémon timeline that starts with human Pokémon bonds around 5,000 years ago. Who built them? Refugees from a cataclysmic flood, perhaps. Carrying knowledge from a pre-Arceus epoch, their empire sunk when the seas reclaimed Sunda. But the true revelation comes in the heart of the grandest ruin, a sunken plaza ringed by towering obelisks. Scattered across the mossy flagstones lie artifacts that rewrite capture mechanics entirely. Primal Pokeballs, forged not from apricorn but volcanic glass fused with living coral. Obsidian spheres, jet black and veined with iridescent polyps that writhe when touched, humming with primordial energy. Pick one up, and it doesn't just hold Pokémon, it resonates with their ancient forms, triggering reversions to primal states unseen since the game's loading screens. These primal Pokeballs demand ritual activation. You crush rare abyssal pearls into the coral lattice, chanting decoded phrases from the Borobudur cipher. We unravel chapters back. Success binds ultra-rare sea legends, like a colossal eel with jaws that generate whirlpools, or bioluminescent leviathans whose roars echo through the water like thunder. Fail, and the ball shatters, releasing pressurized gas that blinds you and summons territorial guardians. Ghostly echoes of that lost civilization's enforcers, spectral warriors phasing through the currents to drag you back to the surface. Exploration yields lore logs too, tablets recounting how this pre-Pokémon society harnessed mega energies without stones, drawing power from undersea ley lines tied to the wave's legendary. It hints at a cataclysm, a mega tsunami triggered by awakened primordials that buried their world, leaving only these relics for modern trainers to plunder. And as you surface, gasping for air, pockets heavy with those volcanic glass orbs, the map's HUD glitches faintly, overlaying Indonesian batik patterns on your inventory screen. This underwater odyssey doesn't end with loot. It feeds directly into the region's mythos, proving the developers wove real Sunda geology into the code, sonar scans from actual Indonesian expeditions mirrored in the ruin layouts. Players who've data mined the files report unused assets, coral-encrusted statues of dancing figures locked behind flags for primal evolutions. It's as if the game dares you to question the surface world's dominance, pulling you toward even darker dualities lurking in the shallows. Those primal Pokeballs become your edge in late-game naval battles, their coral veins pulsing to amplify water-type moves by 30%, but they whisper too, auditory hallucinations of gamelan tones reversed, echoing the cursed files from that vanished designer's trip. The lottery's true funders? Shadowy archaeologists obsessed with reclaiming this lost age, their waves research a smokescreen for dredging up Sunda's ghosts. Yet for all this depth, the ocean's surface hides fiercer conflicts, where primal forces of creation and destruction clash in eternal dance. Up next in Chapter 21, the Rangda and Bong dynamic, you'll uncover how these Balinese deities manifest as rival legendaries, their battle deciding the fate of the islands themselves. Stick around, because one wrong capture could unleash chaos no primal ball can contain. Those ancient ruins beneath the waves weren't just relics of a forgotten era. They pulsed with the same primal forces that birthed the box art legendaries themselves, the twin titans of Pokémon winds and waves. Terravolt, the serpentine lord of gales, and Hydrafoon, the churning empress of tempests, stand locked in eternal strife on every cartridge cover, their forms twisting like living storms. But peel back the glossy reveal trailer, and you'll uncover their true archetypes. Rangda and Bong, the Balinese deities locked in a cosmic tug-of-war that defines good against evil, chaos against order for centuries. Terravolt emerges first in the artwork, a majestic worm with scales like rippling windswept palms, its mane flowing as if caught in an unending monsoon. This isn't mere fantasy flair, It's Barong reborn, the mythical king of spirits from Bali's shadow puppet tales, protector of the righteous, embodiment of Dharma. Barong strides into legends as a chimeric beast, lion-headed dragon, warding off malevolence with raw, benevolent fury. Terravolt mirrors that to the core. Its signature move summons vortexes that purify the battlefield, scattering illusions and debuffs like evil spirits fleeing a temple rite. Players who've data mined the beta builds whisper about hidden lore entries, fragments of text describing Terravolt as the eternal sentinel, devouring corruption before it festers. Evil doesn't triumph here. It gets hurled back into the void, just as Barong repels Rangda's curses in the sacred plays. Then there's Hydrafoon, coiled opposite, her body a maelstrom of ink-black waves crashing into jagged coral horns. She's Rangda incarnate, the child-eating witch queen, widow of the underworld, whose every lash summons calamity. In Balinese myth, Rangda leads Lyak demons on midnight rampages, her tongue lolling like a serpent's promise of doom. Hydrafoon channels that dread. Her attacks flood the arena with hallucinatory tides, status effects that twist allies against each other, mirroring Rangda's power to sow discord among gods and men. The box art captures their deadlock perfectly, Terravolt's gales pushing back Hydrafoon's surges, neither yielding, a perfect stalemate. This isn't random rivalry. It's the Balinese philosophy of Arub Binada, the duality of opposites, where good and evil must clash forever to sustain the universe. Game Freak didn't invent this balance. They lifted it wholesale from Ubud's temple carvings, where Barong and Rangda are carved face to face on every gateway lintel. But the smoking gun lies in their battle animations, those fluid, hypnotic sequences that unfold when they clash in the wild. Or your party. Watch Terravolt's entry. It doesn't stomp or roar, it performs the Barong dance. Claws rake the air in precise, ritualistic sweeps, body swaying side to side like a gamelan orchestra's rhythm, mane flaring to mimic the lion mask's shake. Hydrafoon counters with Rangda's frenzy, her tentacles whip in erratic spirals, head lolling unnaturally low, eyes blazing red as she circles with that signature witch's hunch. Slow it down frame by frame, as leaked animator notes confirm, and the footwork matches the Kalanarang performance beat for beat, the sacred Balinese opera where these deities battle through trance-induced choreography. Terravolt lunges with Barong's forward thrust, protective and measured. Hydrafoon retaliates with Rangda's clawing frenzy, wild and invasive. Even the sound design syncs, wind chimes for Terravolt's poise, dissonant gongs for Hydrafoon's rage, echoing the reversed gamelan we traced in those cursed sound files from Chapter 17. This dance isn't filler, it's the battle system's core. When they mega-evolve or dynamax, the animations elongate into full performances, forcing a turn-based rhythm that feels alive, almost possessed. Beta testers reported glitches where NPCs would freeze mid-battle, muttering incantations in Old Javanese, as if the code itself invoked the spirits. Game Freak's devs, fresh from that vanished designer's Bali sojourn, embedded these moves to encode the myth. Victory demands harmony, not domination. Win too decisively against one, and the environment shifts, jungles overgrow or seas recede, forcing you to summon the other for balance. It's subtle, woven into the survival crafting we dissected earlier, where over-relying on wind herbs poisons your stock with wave blight, and vice versa. Yet duality alone can't explain the game's fractured world. Lurking in the post-game data is the third legendary, unannounced, unnamed in trailers, Auralith, the crystalline mediator forged from Sunda's sunken crystals. Neither wind nor wave claims her, she harmonizes them. Picture her form, a hovering prism, facets refracting Terravolt's gales into rainbows, and Hydrafoon's surges into healing mists. Auralith appears only when the duo rampages unchecked, her cry a resonant hum that stills the fray, binding their essences in a trinity of equilibrium. Datamined texts call her the voice of the threshold, echoing Bali's Dewi Shri, rice goddess who brokers peace between warring elements. In gameplay, she's the wild card. Catch her post-climax, and she unlocks fusion moves where Terravolt and Hydrafoon merge attacks, channeling Barong and Rangda's reconciled dance into unstoppable synergy. Aurolith's Chamber? Buried in Metropolis's underbelly, wired into a grid that hums with forgotten power. What secrets does that Metropolis power grid hold, pulsing like a heart beneath the lottery's glittering facade? Those mesmerizing battle animations of Rangda and Barong, twisting through the air like shadows in a Balinese temple rite, don't just thrill in combat, they hint at a deeper harmony woven into the very fabric of Gen 10's world. That eternal dance of chaos and order pulses, strongest not in the wild jungles, but right at the heart of the game's gleaming hub, Metropolis, the sprawling coastal megacity where your 13-year-old protagonist first sets foot after winning that suspicious lottery vacation. Towering skyscrapers pierce the humid twilight sky, their neon veins humming with an energy that defies the tropical storms battering the shores. Elevators whisk you silently between floors, stacked like ancient ziggurats. Holographic billboards flicker with ads for synthetic Pokeballs and jungle survival gear, and the streets below thrum with hover trams gliding on invisible rails. Metropolis isn't just a starting point, it's a marvel of engineering, sustaining a population of millions in a region where monsoons could black out lesser grids for weeks. But peel back the glossy facade, hack into the maintenance terminals scattered through the undercity alleys, and you'll uncover the chilling truth, powering it all. Deep beneath the central plaza, encased in a labyrinth of reinforced graphene vaults and quantum shielding, resides the secret source of the city's energy, a captured legendary Pokémon. Not some fleeting wild encounter, but a colossal entity. Whispers from data-mined files call it the Tideheart, a serpentine behemoth with scales like rippling obsidian waves, its body coiled around a core that radiates perpetual plasma. Legends tie it to the sunken Sunda ruins we explored last time, a guardian spirit once free to churn the oceans and balance the archipelago's primal forces. Now, it's shackled by the Waves Corporation, those shadowy lottery backers, their tech leeching its boundless vitality through neural harnesses and ether conduits. Every light in Metropolis flickers in sync with its labored breaths, every air purifier whirs on the heat of its suppressed fury. Players who've glitched through the barriers describe the hum, a low, resonant throb, like gamelan gongs echoing from the Earth's core, growing erratic as if the creature senses its jailers. Your young hero stumbles onto this revelation midway through the main quest line. After chaining side stories in the high-rises and befriending streetwise NPCs who drop cryptic warnings about the beast below. It starts innocently enough. A maintenance quest to fix a flickering substation leads to a hidden elevator, plunging you into sterile corridors lined with humming servers and observation windows smeared with bioluminescent residue. Alarms blare softly as you overhear engineers debating containment protocols, their voices laced with unease. It's restless tonight, feels the pull of the full moon tides. And then, the reveal hits like a hyper beam. Through a reinforced viewport, you see it. The Tideheart thrashes faintly against glowing restraints, eyes like storm lanterns locking onto yours for a split second that freezes your controller. Data logs flood your Pokédex output metrics rivaling a fusion reactor, sustainability projections spanning centuries, all at the cost of this ancient being's freedom. Here comes the ethical dilemma that grips the 13-year-old protagonist like a vice, forcing you to confront the moral core of Gen 10's survival narrative. Do you report the find to the authorities, earning corporate favor and upgrades to your team, but dooming the Tideheart to eternal servitude? Or do you initiate the sabotage sequence blinking on your hacked terminal, risking your vacation pass, alerting security drones, and potentially collapsing the grid? It's not a binary choice. Branching dialogues let you negotiate with the creature through rhythmic pulse patterns, echoing those Rangda Barong dances, pleading for release or symbiosis. Side with freedom, and Metropolis begins to falter. Streetlights dim, vendors grumble about shortages, mirroring the real-world tensions of exploiting nature's titans. Stay loyal to the system, and you unlock elite facilities, but nightmares haunt your campfires, whispers of the Tideheart's rage seeping into dream sequences. For a kid protagonist fresh from a mundane life. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's personal, tying back to the lottery gift that stranded you here, complicit in the exploitation. And then, precisely halfway through the story, at the end of Act 2, after 30 hours of jungle treks and ruin dives, the blackout event detonates everything. It triggers regardless of your prior choice, but amplified by it. A cataclysmic surge as the Tideheart breaks free in a spectacle of shattering vaults and tidal shockwaves. Metropolis plunges into abyss, skyscrapers go dark, hover trams screech to emergency halts, panicked crowds flood the rain-slicked plazas while emergency flares paint the sky crimson. The game world transforms overnight. Dynamic weather locks into perpetual night storms, new feral Pokémon hordes rampage through shuttered districts, and survival crafting ramps up with blackout-specific recipes, fashioning glow orbs from bioluminescent fungi or rigging ether traps from scavenged conduits. Questlines splinter, corporate remnants hunt you as a saboteur, while rebel factions emerge from the Undercity, offering alliance with the now roaming Tideheart. Radio chatter crackles across your comms. Grid's gone, it's awake. The balance is broken. This pivot isn't just a plot twist, it reshapes the map, flooding coastal zones with explorable wreckage and unlocking post-game epilogues, where your decision echoes into the legendary's final confrontation. The fallout lingers in every shadowed alley you prowl, every ration you forage, forcing you to question if progress demands such sacrifices. And as the lights flicker back unevenly across a humbled metropolis, fragments of an older tongue start appearing etched into the Tideheart's scales, murmuring through the static. That brings us straight into Chapter 23, the language of the ancients, where those forbidden syllables unlock secrets that could rewrite the entire archipelago's fate. As the 13-year-old protagonist slips away from the glowing heart of Metropolis, heart-pounding from the choice they've just made, whether to shatter the chains binding that colossal legendary Pokémon or leave the city's lights flickering in guilty silence, they plunge back into the jungle's embrace. Vines snag at their clothes, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming night flowers. But it's not the predators that stop them cold. It's a slab of weathered stone, half buried under moss, its surface carved with symbols that pulse faintly under the moonlight, as if whispering secrets too old for human ears. Those carvings aren't random scratches from some forgotten expedition. They form a script, jagged yet elegant, repeating across dozens of tablets scattered through the undergrowth like breadcrumbs from a god. Our explorer pauses, tracing a finger over the grooves, feeling the chill of stone that hasn't warmed to sunlight in millennia. This is the language of the ancients, a dialect pieced together from fragments that linguists in the game's lore have chased for generations. It's not just letters, it's a living code where each glyph evokes the cry of a primordial Pokémon or the rumble of tectonic plates reshaping the world. Deciphering it starts simple, with pictograms that mirror the jungle's own inhabitants, a coiled serpent for what we'd call acorns, but twisted into something fiercer, its fangs dripping with evolutionary potential. Deeper in, the sentences unfold. One tablet, wedged in the roots of a banyan tree older than the region's tallest volcanoes, reads like a chronicle. From the cradle of mists, the first sparks flew, binding spirit to flesh in eternal dance. Scholars in the Pokémon world and players poring over data-mined files cross-reference this with expedition logs from the game's early builds. The translation hinges on phonetic echoes, where vowel clusters mimic the calls of legendary birds long before Lugia soared the seas. Push further into the foliage, past bioluminescent fungi that light your path like hesitant lanterns, and the tablets cluster thicker. Here the prose turns poetic, almost ritualistic. The winds carried seeds of power across the waves, seeding life where shadows met sun. It's exhaustive work in-game, requiring you to align shards under specific moonlight phases, rotating them until the glyphs align with constellation overlays pulled from your Pokédex. Each success unlocks audio logs, ghostly chants in that ancient tongue, layered with the roar of waves crashing on unborn shores. The full lost history emerges not as a single epic, but a mosaic. Tales of cataclysms that birthed the elemental types, of humans who first whispered commands to beasts, forging the train a bond before Pallet Town was a dream. And woven through every line is a thread that ties this tropical sprawl straight back to Kanto's roots. Those original lore masters, Professor Oak's predecessors, spoke of a distant cradle in faded journals, a place where Mew danced with the shadows of creation. The tablets confirm it with brutal clarity. One massive monolith, cracked but legible, depicts a landmass mirroring Indonesia's ancient Sunda shelf, its contours matching Kanto's archipelago like a mother outline to her child. The script names it Pura Vida, the pure life, where Arceus's fragments first coalesced into the type chart we know. Kanto wasn't the starting point, it was the diaspora, settlers fleeing cataclysmic floods that submerged this jungle's highlands, carrying Pokémon eggs in woven baskets across stormy seas. Feel the weight of that revelation as you brush away centuries of lichen. The glyphs shift under your touch in augmented reality overlays, revealing hidden layers, faint silhouettes of Mewtwo's precursors, Proto-Pikachu with thunder tails crackling from geothermal vents. This isn't coincidence. Data miners have flagged map geometries where Gen 10's islands nestle against Kanto's eastern fringes, as if the developers etched a subtle atlas of migration. The language unlocks side quests here, where you befriend elder NPCs fluent in fragments of the tongue, trading herbs for phonetic keys that resonate with your starter Pokémon, evolving them prematurely in bursts of ancestral light. But the deepest cut comes in the theory that grips every lore hunter, this region as the birthplace of all Pokémon life. The tablets don't mince words. Central to the cluster, atop a vine-choked ziggurat swallowed by canopy, lies the Keystone Tablet. Its translation, after hours of puzzle solving amid howler monkey cries and firefly swarms, declares, "In the womb of Sunda the infinite egg cracked, spilling forms infinite from one breath." Arceus, not as a distant creator, but as a localized storm entity, tethered to volcanic vents that still rumble under the map. Fossil Pokémon here aren't relics. They're living echoes, revived not from amber, but from nutrient-rich tar pits, echoing that original genesis. Supporting evidence piles like monsoon debris. Bloodlines trace back, Bulbasaur's lineage to carnivorous pitcher plants endemic to these isles, Charizard's flames to fire-spitting lizards documented in pre-colonial bestiaries. Even Mew, that pink phantom hides in Easter eggs, scans certain glyphs at dawn, and its cry harmonizes with the script, unlocking a hidden cave where proto-humans etched handprints beside paw marks. The theory posits a great divergence, when rising seas after the last ice age forced migrations, seeding Kanto Johto, every region with diluted blood. Gen 10's survival mechanics reinforce it. Your character's instinct meter fills faster here, attuning to primal calls that feel like muscle memory from the dawn of time. This cradle theory fractures the canon wide open. If Sunda birthed it all, then Metropolis's power grid wasn't just unethical, it was sacrilege, harnessing a fragment of that original spark. Your protagonist, piecing translations on tattered notebook pages by campfire glow, realizes the lottery that stranded them here was no accident. It was a summons, drawing a pure-hearted child to rewrite history's first chapter. Yet, as the glyph's full weight settles, storm clouds gather on the horizon, the air turning electric with the promise of unrelenting downpours that reshape the jungle overnight. That's where we head next in Chapter 24, the monsoon mechanic, where one torrent could unearth relics that shatter everything we've uncovered so far, or wash it all away forever. Those stone tablets in the jungle didn't merely connect this region to Kanto's forgotten roots. They etched warnings about the skies themselves, cycles of fury that awaken beasts long dormant beneath the canopy. You can almost hear the scribe's urgency in the faded glyphs, urging future trainers to heed the heavens, because here, the weather isn't backdrop. It's the master. Every gust, Every downpour pulls strings on which Pokémon emerge from the underbrush or rise from misty lagoons. Step into a sweltering noon haze, and you'll find fire types like volcanic salamanders scorching the humid air, their scales glistening as they bask on lava-cracked boulders half buried in vines. Shift to a balmy evening breeze carrying the salt of distant waves, and grass Pokémon unfurl, their leaves whispering secrets while they weave through fern-choked paths. But wait for the thunderheads to roll in, heavy with the scent of wet earth, and electric types crackle into view, chaining lightning between towering banyans whose roots drink deep from ancient aquifers. This real-time weather system ties directly to your handheld device, syncing with local forecasts, pulling data from satellites overhead to mirror the archipelago's true temperament. No random encounters here. It's predictive, alive. A rare squall might summon water-absorbing sponges that pulse with bioluminescent glows, filtering toxins from floodwaters, or spectral winds that birth ghost types swirling like ancestral spirits from Balinese shadow plays. You've got to plan your routes around it, checking the horizon's bruised purpler tint before venturing into the wilds, because a sudden shift could flood your path with steel-clad behemoths shrugging off hail like it's nothing, their armored hides forged in the forge of typhoons past. Trainers who've leaked footage swear by the immersion. Your avatar's clothes cling realistically when soaked, footsteps squelch in mud that remembers every raindrop. And the spawns? They're not just visual flair. Certain legendaries, whispers say, only manifest during equinox storms, their forms twisting from the chaos like Rangda herself summoning tempests. Miss the window, and they're gone, leaving you to grind lesser foes under clearing skies. It's a dance with nature, forcing you to attune, to become part of the island's rhythm where the wrong weather strands you, Pokémon-less and exposed. But nothing tests that attunement like the Great Monsoon, that cataclysmic event crashing across the map every few real-world weeks, turning the jungle into a roaring labyrinth of silver sheets and churning rivers. It starts with a low rumble building from the east, the air thickening until it breaks in a biblical deluge, submerging trails you'd sworn were impassable dry. Palm fronds whip like lashes, coconuts thud into swollen streams, and the ground heaves as flash floods carve new courses, swallowing sinkholes and unveiling submerged grottos glittering with phosphorescent fungi. This isn't some scripted cutscene, it's dynamic, the map bloating by 30% in places, lowlands transforming into vast inland seas where you paddle on makeshift rafts pieced from debris. New areas unlock organically. A coral-encrusted cavern that was once a muddy ditch now teems with abyssal predators, their fins slicing bioluminescent wakes. Elevated plateaus that were sheer cliffs become accessible via cascading waterfalls you can climb, slick with spray that mists your screen. Rare water types flood in, apex hunters like eel-like titans coiling through the torrent, dragging prey into undertows that mirror real oceanic rips. Explorers report stumbling on half-drowned ruins during these deluges, altars from the Sunda epoch rising like ghosts from the muck, inscribed with the same script we decoded last time. Proof the ancients engineered their cities around these monsoons, harnessing them as both destroyer and revealer. Your 13-year-old protagonist, drenched and determined, uncovers artifacts that pulse with latent energy, hinting at the wave's legendary's true power. But linger too long, and the waters rise higher, forcing retreats that reshape your entire journey. What makes this sorcery possible lies in the Switch 2's water physics, a technical marvel that simulates fluid dynamics at a fidelity unseen before. Forget blocky splashes, these are cresting waves governed by Navier-Stokes equations, rippling across terrains with viscosity that adapts to mud, sand, or stone. Particles number in the billions per scene, foam frothing realistically on breakers, debris bobbing with momentum transfer that feels Newtonian. Devs at the Pokémon company poured years into NVIDIA's collaboration, leveraging ray-traced refractions for sunlight shattering through rain shafts, and haptic feedback that thrums your Joy-Con with every swell. You feel the controller vibrate in sync with undertows pulling at your raft. Hear the spatial audio of rain pattering differently on leaves versus rock. Floodwaters interact with every element. Fire types steam and weaken as they wade. Electric currents arc across puddles to chain foes. It's not just pretty, it's systemic. The engine predicts erosion in real time, carving paths that persist post-monsoon, letting you revisit altered landscapes with new spawns attuned to the scars. Critics call it the killer app for Switch 2 hardware, proving portable consoles can rival PS5s in simulation depth, all while keeping frame rates buttery at 60. As the great monsoon ebbs, leaving a transformed world slick and steaming under hesitant sunbeams, those newly exposed crevices beckon toward the island's heart. Whispers from beta testers point to one final bastion, a jungle temple shrouded in perpetual mist, where the ancients' ultimate secret awaits convergence of storm and stone. What guardian lurks there, and how does it tie every thread we've unraveled? As the great monsoon finally ebbs away, its torrential rains carve fresh paths through the flooded jungle, exposing ancient stone steps slick with moss and half-buried vines that lead you straight toward the archipelago's pulsing core. You've battled through the storm's fury, your team drenched but unbreakable, and now those receding waters part like a veil, revealing the final jungle temple, a colossal structure of weathered basalt and twisting roots, rising from the mist-shrouded heart of the islands where the lost history has slumbered for millennia. You step forward, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming night orchids, their petals glowing faintly under shafts of sunlight, piercing the canopy. This isn't just any ruin, it's the nexus, the vault where every stone tablet you've deciphered, from the sunken ruins of Sunda to the scattered glyphs in the language of the ancients, converges. Vines thicker than your arm pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if the temple itself breathes, guarding secrets that could rewrite the Pokémon world's origins. Your 13-year-old protagonist, still wide-eyed from the Metropolis lottery win that thrust you into this adventure, feels the weight of it all. The path upward winds past crumbling friezes depicting Rangda and Bong, locked in their eternal dance, their forms mirrored in the box art legendaries that set this journey in motion. Every chamber you enter deepens the mystery. Echoes of forgotten chants reverberate off walls etched with maps of a pre-Kanto civilization, one that harnessed the winds and waves long before trainers tamed legendaries. You encounter spectral guardians, Pokémon evolved under monsoon pressures, their hides shimmering with residual rain, testing your resolve with battles that demand perfect synergy between your storm-hardened team and the temple's elemental trials. One wrong move, and geysers of pressurized water erupt from the floors, or gusts whip debris into blinding whirlwinds. But you press on, translating final inscriptions that whisper of a cataclysm, a downfall tied not just to nature's wrath, but to human ambition. At last, you reach the innermost sanctum, a vast dome open to the skies where bioluminescent fungi cast an ethereal blue glow over a central pedestal. There, suspended in a vortex of swirling air, hovers the complete archive of the lost history, a crystalline archive pulsing with holographic visions of the archipelago's true past. Touch it, and the air shimmers. Visions flood your mind of spice traders from ancient Nusantara, merging Pokémon lore with volcanic spirits, forging the first bonds that echo through Kanto's own myths. This is the heart, the repository that confirms the Indonesia connection woven into Gen 10's fabric, far beyond any Hawaiian facade. But claiming this prize awakens the temple's ultimate sentinel. The dome cracks open as hurricane-force winds howl inward, coalescing into the guardian of the winds, a majestic avian behemoth with feathers like razor-edged palm fronds, eyes blazing with cyclonic fury, and wings that summon tempests capable of leveling Metropolis itself. This boss fight isn't mere spectacle, it's a symphony of survival mechanics drawn from the monsoon's chaos. The arena shifts dynamically, platforms rise and fall on gusts, forcing you to dodge aerial barrages while positioning for type advantages. Your Pokémon must exploit wind currents to close distances, countering the Guardian's signature move, a vortex eclipse that drains PP and summons illusory clones mimicking Rangda's illusions. Phase 1 tests your agility. evade slicing downdrafts while chipping away at its armored plumage, revealed to be fossilized from the sunken ruins era. As its health dips, it ascends, unleashing a maelstrom that mirrors the great monsoon, flooding the dome's edges and introducing water-type vulnerabilities. You counter with grounded electrics and flyers honed in the jungle's depths, but the real challenge peaks in Phase 3. The Guardian channels the archipelago's primal rage, summoning phantom winds that replay historical tragedies, visions of the power grid's captive legendary shattering, free, dooming the region to isolation. Through it all, your attacks land true, each blow unraveling protective barriers, until the beast crashes earthward in a whirlwind of defeated fury. Silence falls, broken only by the archive's hum as it imprints the full lost history into your Pokédex. Yet victory sours into revelation. Amid the dispersing winds, a holographic figure materializes, not a myth, but your protagonist's true father, long thought lost at sea after the lottery win. He stands revealed as the architect of the region's downfall, the engineer who first tapped the Metropolis power grid, binding that legendary Pokémon in a bid for unlimited energy. His ambition cracked the archipelago's ley lines, triggering the cataclysms etched in stone, the very monsoons and sinkings you've navigated. Tears mix with rain on your young trainer's face as he confesses via the archive, "I sought to power a new era, but unleashed the winds of ruin. Forgive me, or end what I began." This truth reshapes everything: the ethical dilemmas of the city, the balance of Rangda and Bong, the ancient languages now carrying his signature. The father figure fades, leaving you with a fractured Pokeball containing his final gift, a wind-infused megastone tied to the Guardian's essence. The temple quiets, but the archipelago trembles faintly, as if the full weight of exposed history demands more answers. What power brokers buried this Indonesia-rooted saga under a veil of tropical misdirection? That question drags us into Chapter 26, the Hawaii cover-up, where the real suppression begins to unravel. With the Guardian of the Winds defeated, its ethereal form dissolving into swirling mist, you step forward into the chamber's glowing core. Stone walls etched with ancient script part like waves, revealing a cache of modern documents, sealed folders, stamped with the Pokémon Company's logo, dated just months before the official reveal. These aren't relics of the archipelago's past, they're the smoking gun of a deliberate deception, blueprints for burying the true Indonesian heart of this world under a facade of sun-soaked paradise. Those folders spill their secrets page by page. Memos from high-level executives detail frantic debates in boardrooms far from the jungle's humid embrace. The Pokémon Company chose to market these games as a Hawaiian vacation because Indonesia's rich tapestry of mythology, its Bong and Rangda legends, the rhythmic gamelan echoes in temple dances, posed too great a risk of backlash in a global market hungry for safe, sanitized escapism. Hawaii, with its lei garlands and hula sway, offered the perfect veil. Familiar, exotic, yet non-threatening, a trope audiences already adored from past media blitzes. Leakers whisper that focus groups lit up at the word aloha, while Bali triggered flags for cultural appropriation. So they pivoted, rebranding the archipelago's jagged volcanoes and monsoon-lashed coasts as generic tropical islands with ukulele undertones, airbrushing out the gamelan flutes and shadow puppet artistry that defined early prototypes. Dig deeper into those memos, and the raw tension leaps off the paper. One, penned by a senior cultural consultant in late 2025, warns of heightened sensitivities around Indonesian folklore, particularly Balinese Hinduism's dualistic spirits, direct inspirations for our box art legendaries. Another, from the marketing VP, counters with cold calculus. Hawaiian vibes neutralize controversy, lean into surfboards and poke bowls for broad appeal. Avoid any direct nods to archipelagos east of the Philippines. Redactions black out names, but the directive is clear: prototype maps labeled Nusantara Isles get scrubbed, replaced with Windward Atolls. Survival mechanics tied to real-time monsoons, drawn from Indonesia's wet season fury, are softened into refreshing trade winds. Even the protagonist's lottery one trip, starting in that gleaming Metropolis, was framed as a Polynesian getaway to dodge questions about why a 13-year-old jets to a jungle-choked chain mimicking the lesser Sundas. You can almost hear the conference calls crackling with urgency, executives poring over sensitivity reports stacked like kindling. Indonesia's cultural guardians had already voiced concerns over past games' loose myth borrowings. Think the eerie parallels to Hawaiian's legendaries, but Gen 10's scale amplified the stakes. The memos revealed test builds where Pokémon danced in exact Barong Rangda poses, their animations synced to hypnotic Kakak chants. Too authentic, they decided. Too tied to living traditions still practiced in Ubud temples and Lombok shrines. So the Hawaiian pivot wasn't laziness, it was strategy, a calculated swap to keep shareholders smiling while the true setting spirits slumbered undercover. Feel the duplicity in every frame of that February 2026 Pokémon Presents. Palm trees sway, steel drums pulse, but linger on the horizon. Those mist-shrouded peaks echo Java's Mount Merapi, not Oahu's gentle slopes. The internal pushback leaks through in subtle tells, Metropolis's power grid humming from a captive wind spirit, a nod to Wayang Kulit tales of bound gods, not Hawaiian mana. And the weather system, monsoons that flood routes and summon rare beasts straight from Sumatra's lore, repackaged as tropical showers to evade scrutiny. Now consider the title itself, Pokémon Winds and Pokémon Waves, a masterstroke of misdirection that serves two different masters with elegant precision. On the surface, for the Hawaiian crowd, it's pure poetry. Gentle trade winds rustling palms, waves crashing on black sand beaches, evoking postcard perfection. But peel back the luau layer, and it whispers to those in the know. In Indonesian archipelago lore, winds evoke the roaring angin kencang of monsoon seasons that reshape islands, carriers of ancestral spirits in Dayak myths. Waves pulse with ombak references from seafaring Bugis traders or the tidal guardians in Sulawesi epics, dual forces of creation and chaos, mirroring the box legend's eternal dance. The title straddles both worlds, innocuous enough for Western shelves yet loaded with subtext for Southeast Asian players who spot the gamelan rhythm in battle themes. It's genius camouflage, letting the game ship without riots, while the lost history tablets reveal the switcheroo to eagle-eyed explorers like you. Those memos don't stop at marketing sleight of hand. Buried appendices outline region-neutral asset swaps. Balinese split-gate temples become ancient ruins, gamelan-inspired soundtracks muffled into steel guitar strums. Yet cracks persist. The jungle's stone tablets, inscribed in a script blending Javanese Aksara with Kanto runes, naming the archipelago Tanah Air, motherland in Bahasa. The Great Monsoon Event? A cataclysm straight from Borobudur reliefs, flooding maps to unveil submerged atolls modelled on the Spice Islands. Pokémon Company insiders reportedly clashed for weeks, one leaked email pleading, "The soul is Indonesian, Hawaii is just the skin." But commerce won, as it always does. As you pocket those folders, the chamber hums with fading energy, the Guardian's last breath stirring pages like fallen leaves. This cover-up isn't ancient grudge, it's fresh ink, a 2027 launch looming with Switch 2 exclusivity to amplify the lie. Why risk it all on truth when paradise sells? The ethical knot tightens around our young protagonist, handed paradise's keys, while the real archipelago's ghosts demand reckoning. What shadows does this deception cast over the franchise's future? Uncover it all in Chapter 27, The Legacy of Gen 10, where the true heirs to this hidden world step into the light, threatening to unravel everything. Those leaked memos painted a clear picture of the Pokémon Company's desperate pivot, dressing up an Indonesian-inspired archipelago as a sunny Hawaiian getaway to sidestep the cultural minefield. But you know what they couldn't hide? The raw terror woven into every pixel of Gen 10's survival horror mechanics, the kind that clings to your skin long after the credits roll. Picture the moment you first step off that lottery-won ferry into Metropolis, the gleaming city that hides its pulsating heart, a legendary Pokémon chained beneath the streets, its energy fueling the lights above. From there, the jungle swallows you whole, not with the cheerful bounce of past adventures, but with a creeping dread. Resources dwindle as night falls, your backpack's inventory ticking down like a heartbeat under strain. Pokémon don't just battle, they stalk, their eyes glowing through the underbrush, forcing you to choose between fight, flight, or a desperate forage that might end in poison or worse. This wasn't Pokémon as you knew it. No more endless grinding under a perpetual sun. Gen 10 demanded you survive, hunger bars depleting if you ignored wild berries laced with hidden toxins, stamina draining in the relentless monsoon rains that turned paths into rivers of mud. The Great Monsoon event we explored last time? It wasn't just a map reveal, it was apocalypse by weather, flooding temples and stranding you on rooftops with feral packs circling below. And those stone tablets in the jungle depths, whispering the language of the ancients? They weren't lore dumps. They were riddles etched in blood-red script, hinting at Kanto's forgotten sins tied to this very soil. The Guardian of the Winds boss in the final jungle temple tested that survival instinct to its breaking point. No turn-based safety net here, real-time dodges through whipping gales, its spectral form phasing through walls while you scrambled for cover, health potions shattering in your fumbling hands. Beat it, and the lost history unfurls, ancient islanders who worshipped wind spirits, their rituals echoing the original Kanto legendaries, but twisted by colonial scars that the company buried under Hawaiian lace. Now, as we stand at the edge of this revelation, let's talk about what this means for the franchise's future. Survival horror in Pokémon. It's not a gimmick, it's the evolution the series has craved since the caves of Mount Moon echoed with Zubats. Imagine future generations. Gen 11, 12, building on this. No more kid-friendly romps. Expect sprawling open worlds where permadeath looms for reckless trainers, moral choices that scar your save file, like euthanizing a corrupted companion Pokémon or allying with poachers to survive a famine arc. The Pokémon Company tasted the sales spike from those leaked demos millions pre-ordered on Whispers alone, and they won't turn back. This shifts the brand from toy aisle staple to mature epic, rivaling the dark turns of Final Fantasy or Resident Evil, drawing in lapsed fans, hungry for stakes that matter. But it risks alienating the youngest players, forcing dual releases, sanitized versions for the masses, horror-laced editions for the daring. Gen 10 cracked the door, the floodgates are next. And none of this surfaces without you, the community. Data miners tore through the code like archaeologists in a fever dream, piecing together the Indonesia connection from scraps the company tried to erase. It started with texture files labeled in Bahasa Indonesia, swapped last minute for English overlays. Then forum threads exploded over NPC dialogue glitches, muttering about poorer temples and Wayang shadow puppets before patches silenced them. Reddit sleuths cross-referenced monsoon patterns with real Sumatran weather data, mapping hidden routes that only unlocked during specific lunar cycles. You shared speedrun strats that glitched the Metropolis power grid, revealing submerged ruins with Javanese script tying back to Mewtwo's origins. Discord servers buzzed through all-nighters, translating those jungle tablets into full mythologies of wind gods betrayed by outsiders, echoes of historical upheavals the Hawaiian rebrand scrubbed clean. Without your relentless digging, the cover-up holds. You didn't just play Gen 10, you unearthed its soul, turning a vacation sim into a whistleblower's manifesto. That community fire led to the final piece of the puzzle, tucked away where no one casual would look, the game's credits. Scroll past the composers and testers, and there's a single frame anomaly. A latitude and longitude burned into the black screen, visible only if you pause at exactly 37 seconds. Plug those coordinates into a map, and they point to a forgotten atoll off Indonesia's coast, site of a real 1989 shipwreck, carrying what locals swear were glowing crates from a monster lab. Cross-check with Kanto lore, and it aligns with the first Mewtwo experiments, smuggled post-Cinnabar disaster. Devs hid it as an Easter egg, but you amplified it into legend, screenshots flooding Twitter, until the company issued a vague artistic license statement. This legacy pulses through every future trailer, every Switch 2 exclusive on the horizon. The survival horror roots dig deeper, demanding worlds that breathe danger, ethics that haunt, and histories that refuse to stay buried. You've changed the game forever, ensuring no Pokémon adventure feels safe again. But what lies beyond the horizon? That coordinate doesn't end at a shipwreck, it beacons to something vast, unraveling threads across every generation. Stick around, the real storm is just breaking. The community's relentless digging has exposed not just the survival horror lurking in Gen 10's jungles, but the raw power of that Indonesia connection to reshape everything ahead. This lost history, etched into those ancient tablets we've pieced together, isn't some dusty relic. It's a prophecy for Pokémon's next decade, demanding the franchise evolve or fade into irrelevance. Picture the ripple effects already stirring. Game Freak can't ignore the floodgates we've opened. Those monsoon mechanics from the archipelago, they'll become the backbone of every future title, turning static battles into dynamic clashes, where weather isn't a gimmick but a living force, drawn straight from Indonesia's equatorial fury. Imagine roaming vast, procedurally shifting landscapes where floods unearth hidden ruins mid-game, forcing you to adapt like a true explorer in the wilds of Sumatra or Borneo. No more predictable routes, every playthrough bends to the whims of real-time storms, pulling from the very geography that birthed the lost history. And the legendaries? The waves and winds duo we've unveiled. They're just the vanguard. Over the next 10 years, expect a pantheon inspired by Indonesia's shadow puppet epics, the Wayang Kulit tales of gods battling chaos in the seas. These aren't cartoonish beasts, they're colossal forces tied to primal myths, where the waves' legendary crashes, tsunamis that swallow islands, echoing the folklore of Ni Roro Kidul, the queen of the southern seas. Developers will weave this deeper, making legendaries gatekeepers of cultural lore, unlocked only through puzzles rooted in ancient Javanese scripts. Pokémon battles evolve into ritualistic confrontations, with type advantages flavored by elemental spirits, fire tempered by volcanic ash from Krakatoa, water infused with the salt of Maluku's spice roots. Survival horror bleeds into the core loop too, no longer experimental. Gen 11 might drop you on fragmented atolls, scavenging for berries amid nocturnal predators inspired by the Orang Pendek, those elusive jungle humanoids from Kalimantan legends. Health management, crafting from exotic flora, night cycles where visibility drops and ghost types from Dayak spirit myths haunt the canopy. These become standard training players in resilience drawn from Indonesia's untamed heart. The Pokémon Company knows it. Leaked roadmaps hint at multiplayer co-op expeditions into forbidden zones, community-driven lore hunts that mirror our own discoveries, keeping the fanbase as co-creators. But this shift runs deeper, touching the soul of what Pokémon has always chased: connection to the wild unknown. The lost history mandates authenticity, pulling the series from sanitized vacations back to raw exploration. No more hiding behind Hawaiian facades. Future regions will honor real-world inspirations outright, with consultations from indigenous storytellers, ensuring myths like the Garuda's flight or the Nagasa's underwater realms fuel open-world epics. Economy-wise, it's a gold mine. Merchandise of intricate batik patterned Pokeballs, AR filters overlaying legendaries on your local beach, spin-offs diving into archipelago survival sims. By the end of the decade, Pokémon isn't just a game, it's a cultural bridge, grossing billions while preserving fading oral traditions through interactive legend. Now, let's linger on that profound crossroads where folklore, geography, and gaming collide, a trinity that's ignited Gen 10 and will propel the franchise forward. Folklore supplies the myths, those timeless Indonesian sagas of harmony between humans, spirits, and nature, transforming pixelated creatures into vessels of ancestral wisdom. Geography grounds it all, the archipelago's 1,000 islands, dictating fractured maps, mangrove mazes, and volcanic peaks that demand vertical exploration, making every step a lesson in the planet's pulse. Gaming fuses them seamlessly, evolving from turn-based simplicity to immersive simulations where you feel the humidity, hear the gamelans echo in temple soundtracks, and strategize around real ecological cycles. This intersection isn't accidental, it's evolutionary. Past gens flirted with it. Kanto's dragons nodding to East Asian lore, Unova's deserts evoking Sahara vibes, but Gen 10 perfects the alchemy. Folklore breathes life into mechanics, like possession states from Pokemon ghost rituals that flip your Pokemon's loyalties mid-battle. Geography enforces consequence, with rising seas from the Great Monsoon permanently altering routes, mirroring climate truths from Indonesia's vulnerable coasts. Gaming amplifies the intimacy, letting you bond with a starter evolved from Komodo dragon myths, its roars shaking your controller as thunder rolls. We've seen franchises falter by ignoring these threads. Think hollow open worlds without soul. Pokémon thrives by embracing them, turning global audiences into lore scholars. In the decade ahead, this trifecta births hybrid experiences. VR dives into submerged ruins, mobile tie-ins tracking real-world migrations of bird Pokémon akin to hornbills over Sulawesi. It's gaming matured, where folklore preserves heritage, geography educates on fragility, and play ignites wonder. As the sun dips low over Bali's cliffs, casting that fiery Indonesian sunset in hues of molten gold and deepest crimson, a silhouette rises on the horizon, the waves legendary, its serpentine form coiling through crashing breakers, fins like ancient sails billowing against the twilight. This is no end, but the dawn of horizons unbound, where the lost history calls us all to chase the next legend. Thank you for journeying with me through the jungles and secrets. Sleep deep tonight, dreamers of the archipelago. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating,